So how do you come up with this title, Prof?
I think I'm gonna have to explain afterwards.
Yeah, all right, okay. It's interesting. Come up with this title, Prof. ada echo.
I'm gonna have to explain afterwards.
Yeah, all right, okay.
YouTube.
I think my YouTube is on now. Thank you, Sana. All right. So for your information, Prof, because we have a live session, the live streaming also on the Facebook. So my staff will copy any question from Facebook to here, so that we can address also the questions.
Good.
So it's 9 o'clock. Just before we start, I just want to take 1 minute to share this information with our staff in USM. This is especially for USM lecturers, USM academic staff, just to promote our MOOC Challenge 2021. Last year we have MOOC Challenge 2020 and it was good, very good. So we have it again. So USM is continuing to support and aggressively promote MOOC, because we believe in merakyatkan ilmu, democratizing knowledge. So we want to support the Shift 9 globalized online learning in our blueprint, education blueprint, as well as SDG Goal 4, providing inclusive quality education. So one way of doing that is by sharing our knowledge with the world, free, of course. So our MOOC is still free, and we are still doing and aggressively promoting MOOC in USM. And next week, on the 8th of March, I'll be giving, we have two. One is a forum with the MOOC Challenge 2020 winners. We want to hear from them, their experience, the challenges that they have faced, and how do they, stay strong and produce and created a very high quality MOOC. One of the MOOC now have 10,000 students enrolled in the MOOC. So we want to hear from them, from the horse's mouth, how they did it. Okay, and I will also take this opportunity in this program. Your MOOC is the gateway to the world, to convince you and to make a compelling case why everyone in USM at least, without exception, should embark on MOOC and should create at least one small MOOC to begin with. Yeah. So please, everyone, make a point. Yeah. Please attend this session. Let's hear from our colleagues who have done good MOOC, quality MOOC, and I want to convince all of you to be part of this endeavor. Yeah. Okay, let's start this morning. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Good morning. Selamat sejahtera, everyone. Warm welcome to everyone to our webinar series. This webinar series brought to you by the Center for Development of Academic Excellence, better known as CDAE, Pusat Pembangunan Kecemerlangan Akademik. And my name is Abdul Karim Alias, Director of CDAE, and we are very happy today, this morning, very lucky, very fortunate to have our distinguished speaker this morning, Professor Dr. Fauzi Abdul Rahim, who will be sharing with us this sensational topic here, assessment for the soul, adult 18 plus. So please make sure you are in the right place. If you are not 18 plus, then probably you would have to leave. Okay, that's just a joke. All right. So let me first introduce very briefly our speaker. So I have a long, actually, biodata here. So maybe I will just highlight the most pertinent one, Prof, if you don't mind. So Professor Fauzi Abdul Rahim is actually the recent recipient of the prestigious Anugerah Academic Negara National Academic Award in Teaching category in the Applied Literature and Applied Social Science cluster in the 12th Anugerah Academic Negara 2018. So it's quite recent, still very fresh. So let us congratulate Prof. Fauzia. I think it's not too late to congratulate Prof. Fauzia. So ladies and gentlemen, we have one of the winners and the recipient of Anugerah Academic Negara here. So we should be very proud to hear from Prof. Fauzia this morning. Prof. Fauzia received her PhD from University of Nottingham, United Kingdom, specializing in educational psychology, specifically mediated learning, whatever it means. Maybe she can enlighten us what mediated learning is about. She is a professor from School of Education, UUM, College of Arts and Sciences, and she was formerly the Dean of the School of Education from 2019-2020, and currently appointed again, I think, as the Director of University Teaching and Learning Center. Previously, you also the Director, kan, Prof? So again, appointed again as the Director of University Teaching and Learning Center. So that basically tell us something about who is Prof. Fauzia. Almost indispensable. All right. So she has been with UUM since 1996, has taught various courses related to education psychology, educational psychology, and she has done MOOC. So just now I mentioned about MOOC. So she was the early pioneer of MOOC for UUM. Yeah, she has completed 2 MOOCs or maybe more. And she's also a very active researcher. So she won she's the recipient of Anugerah Academic Negara in teaching category, and yet she is also very prolific, very active in research. So if you talk about balance of research and teaching, I don't believe there should be a balance, but we can try to do both as much as we can, because that is part and parcel of being an academic in the university. She's also very active in participating in innovation competition, won several gold medal, silver medal, silver medal, gold medal. Well, it's a long list of basically her credibility as an academic is unquestionable. That's the bottom line. Yeah, Prof. Yeah? So I'm sorry I don't read the whole biodata because it's just so impressive, I can assure you. Yeah. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, let us enjoy and pay attention and be an active listener to this very, very interesting topic on assessment for the soul for the 18 plus. Without much ado, further ado, Prof, silakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning. Thank you, Prof. Karim. I am so honored to be described as such. I don't think I deserve your nice words, but alhamdulillah, thank you very much for the recognition. Today, thank you to CDAE for inviting me to have this session with USM and probably everyone else in Malaysia as well, or maybe abroad, knowing Prof. Karim's networking. We will have a little sharing session. Yeah, bear with me. And allow me to share my slide as well. Right. Yeah, I think before I make everybody feel disappointed because of the title, I think I better explain why the title is as such. Nothing catchy. In fact, when I started thinking about the title, I didn't think of the effect that what Prof. Karim mentioned just now. Simply because it's actually adults. We define adults as 18 and above. So yeah. So anyway, So this is about how we do assessment for the soul for our students who are largely adults. As mentioned, I am Fauzi Abdul Rahim. Currently, I'm the director of the University Teaching Learning Center. I do not want to be termed as indispensable. No. I would like to find who's going to be my next protege, so that they can lead the center and you know, yeah. Well, for this webinar or workshop or training session, hopefully by the end of this session, participants will be able to identify the characteristics of adult learners, choose meaningful alternative assessment, consider suitable criteria to develop a rubric as a measuring tool, because when I wanted to talk about, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and put it in the chat.
That will help.
Yeah,
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. Okay, once you've already completed the 20 questions, just remember your learning style, yeah? Because after this, I need that information.
Prof,
Yeah,
Zana sini,
yeah.
saya rasa ada something yang block Prof punya slide sekarang ni. Mungkin ada apps di belakang tu yang perlu ditutup tu.
Dia, kejap ya. Kejap.
Minta maaf Prof.
Macam nak view? Macam. Is that better?
Masih ada sikit-sikit lagi. Saya rasa
Yang tu sebenarnya the chat. Sebab kononnya nak tengoklah chat, nak cakap apa kan. Rasa macam tak boleh lah.
Okay.
Tak dapat buka link? Everybody tak dapat buka link ke? Okay, thank you Muhammad Afadil who shared the whole entire HTTP. Thank you very much. Okay, tengah buat. Okay, take your time. Ya, dia kena jawab soalan, correct. I can manage. Kalau it Okay, once we're done, I mean whoever who's done, can't open the link. Alamak. Why can't open the link? I checked. Yeah, I checked this morning. It can. Could you try the, thank you, organizer for copying the actual link. Oh, tak dapat buka di Kubang Krian. Why, Internet problem kot ke macam mana? Tak apa. It's okay. As di kejuruan tak boleh berpusing-pusing aja ke atas tu. Maybe internet lah. Okay. Tu kalau dalam bahasa in Negeri Sembilan, I will say tak dapat nak menolong. Well, you can always do this later, but of course, if whoever who can do it, then we will continue lah afterwards. Yeah. So whoever who has done, could you just use the emoticons to say that you're fine? You know, like you're done. I just want to see how many people who have done. Okay, I've just got one. Okay, no problem, Christine. Take your time. Yeah, surely because there are 20 questions, right? Yeah. Okay. Muhammad Anwar, don't tell me because afterwards you're going to click on the answer when I ask you to do so. Just keep it to yourself, yeah? No, you probably will have three they will have a percentage for all types of categories. Choose the highest, yeah? Are we okay? So far, I've just got 1 or 2. If plus Anwar, that will be 2. No more thumbs up. Okay, that's done. Ada grey box. Grey box apa ni? To stop sharing. Start sharing again.
Mungkin sebab Prof share screen, share PowerPoint Prof share screen atau just share PowerPoint?
PowerPoint. Kenapa? Kalau I share PowerPoint?
Sebab kalau share PowerPoint kalau kita ada benda-benda lain yang pop up di screen kita, di atas kita punya PPT tu dia akan macam ada grey box. Jadi dia akan lindung kita punya PPT tu.
Sekejap ya. Is that better? Now I'm sharing the whole screen. Is that better?
Dia okey, cuma dekat bahagian atas dengan bahagian bawah kanan tu ada grey box. Itu je. Dia tak lindung PPT lah.
Ya. Betul.
Kasih
Sebab yang dekat atas tu is my key yang nak tunjuk, nak share ke, nak stop share ke, participant and all that. And the one yang kat bawah ni is actually the chat box.
Okay.
Asalkan dia tak lindung you all punya the PowerPoint ni lah. So far okay, yeah? The result is okay. Okay, never mind. Just keep the results to yourself. Are we ready? Are we ready, everybody? Banyak thumbs up. Banyak. Okay, yes. Okay, done. Alright. Okay, now next slide. Now you got to use the apa tu? Now you got to scan. I also need to make sure that I can scan to make sure that I can also see. You're supposed to have the Mentimeter, am I right? In that Mentimeter, it's asking you to tell me, tadi yang you all duk cakap, I am a tactile lah, apalah, click that and submit. Click the highest percentage of your learning style and submit. Okay, now I have to stop sharing. Because I need to know how it looks like. Only 26 people submit Okay, never mind. Dah habis submit. Dah habis then what? That's a good one. Yeah, dah habis submit. All right. So basically, based on whoever who has submitted their shall I say, their learning style shows that 36 people have actually responded and managed to answer the questions. And many of us in this room, in this virtual space, are visual in nature. And some are tactile or kinesthetic, and very few are auditory, which means in this situation, if let's just say these are all our students in our classroom, we now have to use this information to start thinking about the kinds of ways in which we should, how we deliver our lesson. That means if you start doing lecture to your students who are like this in your classroom, what do you think will happen?
They will turn off the camera.
Right, they turn off the camera, and what else would they do? Oh, I missed
Poor
the
internet connection.
Sorry?
They will say poor internet connection, trying to log in, and this is what I've been hearing.
Yeah. So if we are going to give just lectures, only 4 people appreciate your voice. The rest of them do not. I mean, if this is the kind of pattern that we have in our classroom, so having just lecture in our classroom and only concentrating on just them listening is not going to be helpful for them to really understand what you are actually teaching. So this is just a snapshot. This is a very simple way of looking in trying to understand the person in front of you in the classroom. Of course, there are many types, many other ways for you to detect and understand your learners. But this is the simplest way to actually find out in your classroom how many of your learners are actually visual, how many are tactile, how many are auditory. And if that is such, what we need to do is actually to provide variety in our, not only in our delivery, but also in our assessment. Okay, so let's go back to, are you able, if I were to, oh yeah, good, yeah, to screen. Right, so in a nutshell, understanding learners is not something that you should just think, oh, only the psychology people will do this. I'm teaching microbiology, I don't need to understand my learners. Well, the fact that you are teaching and the fact that you are still in the higher education, there is a need for you to understand who the clients are, who are the learners in front of you. Because if you don't get them involved in understanding, in making sure that they see the connection between what they're doing in your classroom and how it's related to themselves, they will do exactly what was said, what was shared just now. They will just switch off their camera and actually literally switch off from your lesson. And these learners do not come, they don't come empty. They come with a lot of experiences. The experiences that they have got, they have received when they were in school, when they were in the pre-university, before they entered the university. So what kind of learning experiences were they supposed to have during their school years? That's adaptation to learning, adaptation of learning. Learning was, it was given to them, it was very focused on subject matter, very focused on content, and they were adapting. Their role was just to adapt to the subject and adapting to the content and acquire the knowledge. Please talk dekat dengan microphone, bunyi slow. Okay. Is this okay? Okay, right. So I have to slouch now. Right, and they have to start usually in the schools, what kind of approaches will be suitable will be the guided inquiry base, meaning they are not left to think on their own. whatever that they do, there will be the teacher to guide them. All right, the teacher to actually help them, and they always well, the terminology that we used to get in schools is basically they are spoon fed. Basically, the teachers will tell them what to do. But of course, in schools nowadays, because of the 21st century and the kinds of preparation that we need to do in order for them to come to the university, even in schools, they have already started exploratory-based, inquiry-based learning, yeah, and focusing on student-centered learning approaches. Now, when they enter the pre-university, that's a transitional process. So pre-university will be either they're doing their Form 6 or matriculation or diploma. So that's a transitional process. So and usually they are in the transitional. In fact, in when you're talking about human lifespan, they are also in the transitional stage between being an adolescent to become an adult. And during this stage, they already have minimal guidance. It's not as much as when they were in schools, minimal guidance, and there's an initial exposure to empowerment and taking ownership of their learning. And usually in the way in which they are asked to do their assignments or their tasks, it require them to do some form of decision making. So if anyone here who's actually listening and they're teaching pre-universities and they're not doing this and they're doing something related to the school, then we have got to start thinking whether are we preparing them in the transitional process before they enter the university. When they enter the university, what we have to do or what they will be going through is the emancipation of knowledge. It's no longer knowledge as static, but knowledge is to be challenged, and they have to justify based on their reading. So there will be a trajectory of learning from where they were to where they are going to be, and because of this this sense of them taking the ownership and the empowerment of learning, there is a sense of independence and autonomy. That means what I'm trying to say here is we expect university students, because the nature of their experiences, they are able to take ownership of their own learning, and they know what to do when they enter the university, in achieving their own independence and autonomy. And whatever decisions that they make, as I said just now, because of their exposure to reading and exposure to lots of discussion and meeting prolific people around them in the classroom, in the discussion, in the seminar, so they are exposed to when you say something, it's not based on hearsay, it is based on facts. So it's whatever decisions that they do, they are all informed decisions based on the learning, based on previous research in supporting their argument. Now, that is what they are capable of doing. Whether or not our students can do this, this is where we have to start designing for during our delivery and our assessment, so that these things can appear. Okay, so if you want your students to have the emancipation of knowledge, that means they are actually using the knowledge for something else. They can see the relevance of the knowledge that they are learning in your classroom into the real world context. And they see learning as not just merely to pass the exam or to fulfill the requirement of the program or to graduate, but really seeing learning as something, as a tool that they can use to survive in this challenging world, and making those decisions and become autonomous in their own learning, then you will be able to see that this person has actually grown. They have grown from being spoon-fed to now making informed decisions. Now, that's why we need to make sure that we understand how, what our learners are capable of doing and how we should be addressing our learners so that we do not miss that opportunity, right? Miss that opportunity for them to take the ownership of their own learning. Now, where am I getting all this? It's actually part of what the adult learning theory, which is actually called Andragogy. I know there's lots of Gojis now. Prof. Karim will know this. But we're for today is going to be Andragogy. It's about adult learning theory. It's actually the art and science of helping adults learn. Now, as I said just now, adults do not come empty-handed. They're not empty. It's not a bag full of emptiness. They come with years of accumulating resources. They have experiences. What we need to do is just to tap that experience and connect it to what we are doing right now, what we're teaching, the course that we are teaching, making that transition processes and the trajectory learning possible when they are able to see what they already know and how they're going to go, beyond that. And as I said just now, autonomy is the quest to become independent. So they can become independent. Now, if you see your year 4 student still asking you whether they are right or wrong, still coming to, for, I don't know, it's like, is this right? Is this right? Those kind of questions coming to you when they are already in year 4, then something is wrong. That means we have not develop their skills to become independent and to become autonomous, so that we have not done enough for them to feel that they are being empowered and take ownership of their own learning. So that's something that we have not done right.
Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam.
Prof, can I ask you a question, Prof?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Because I have to ask you a question because this is about the Andragogy. Unfortunately, unfortunately, more than 50% of our class, our students, they don't have expectation. So I don't think, if we think that they have expectation, they have the goal they are looking for, most of them, they don't really prepare for the class.
Yeah.
And how we want to tackle this to make sure that the way we teach the class, it's efficient.
True, Prof. Rosli, yeah. That's what I'm saying. This is the pertinent questions because I'm just telling you what the adults can do. This is what the adults can do. That's why I caveat just now. Whether or not the students in front of you can do, this is where we have to come in order to create this environment so that they now see the value of learning. When they see the value of learning, it will increase their motivation. They have a goal. When they see the relationship between what they are learning to their own career, somehow or rather, that process will help them to become orientated towards goal, And in terms of expectation, true, some of them do not have the expectation. And I can tell you why, because not everybody got what they want. When they filled up the UPU, they didn't get the first that they wrote on, whatever program that they wrote, the first option. Not all got the first option. Chances are some students, they probably got the 12th. You can actually write 12, if I'm not mistaken. They can actually write 12 options, and probably they got the last option. And by the time they reach the 5th option, 6 to the 12, they were just filling it, just to fill it so that they can submit. So that's the reason some of our students who are in our class, they might not even know what they were in for.
So does that mean at the first place, we have to feel their soul before they really get into the courses?
Yeah, that's the whole idea of having the title of today. It's how we have, not only when we are delivering, our instruction during the 14 weeks, we've got to, and also the assessment, we have to design in such a manner that we bring out this potential in the adults. They have this potential. We just need to tap, and we can do that if you hit the right button. And I'm going to show you what buttons that you need to hit later on. Can you bear with me? Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Prof.
Okay. So the context of tertiary education, we're dealing with young adults. Then, if you're thinking that preschool teachers have lots of problems with children running around in the classroom, we've got our own problems dealing with young adults who can, like just now, sorry, I didn't get your name. Was it Dr. Christine who said they would just switch off the video and disappear, you know?
Yeah,
So
it's only Miss. Thank you.
okay, so yeah, thank you, Miss Christine. So yeah, you are dealing with different things. We're still dealing with problems, just like the preschool teachers have problems and the secondary school teachers have problems. We have the problems of our own. Our young adults are not robots. Thank God for that. They're not robots. They are human. And because they are human, they are the most complex being ever created on earth. And because they are complex being, the beauty part of it is if you are able to touch their heart, you'll be able to get into their mind. Now, the whole entire session today is about how can we help our students to see the relevance in what they are learning. Because they are the product of adult environment and they have prior experiences. And I mean, if you really, really get to know your students, you will realize that they come with experiences that you do not have, that you actually can learn a thing or two from them. But how do you tap that? If we are too busy providing lectures, hearing our own voices, we don't hear their voices. But if we allow in our classroom interaction, we allow our students to share their views. If they're not able, I know the next question that's going to come up is, I am asking my students questions, but all I get is complete silence. Well, you don't ask questions like that. You ask the questions in such a manner that they have to respond. So when they respond to you, don't just drink coffee. You've got to listen to what they say, because what you do is to tie whatever that they're saying and make sense and relate it to the course that you are teaching, so that they can see the relevance. Or actually, this particular course is actually related to me, because that's important. Adults who knows that they have experiences and they can actually relate whatever that they're learning to themselves, they value it, they value the learning higher. You know, the value becomes meaningful to them. Am I making sense? Yeah, they value whatever that they're learning, okay, when it's meaningful to them. The other thing that is interesting about adults, but of course this is very contextualized. I mean, it depends on the context and depends on the background. Chances are they are in that period where they they always would like to speak to the, you know, to anybody, you know, and to socialize. They need to socialize. Why do you think that most of our students really want to come back to the university? If you really ask them why they want to come back to the university, it's not because they miss the classes. I don't think so. But what they actually miss is actually the social atmosphere being on campus. They are missing that, because at home it's just them, their family, their siblings. But in the university, they have this culture, this social culture that they really thrive on. Okay, it's not that they miss our lectures, or maybe some of them do, but the chances are they just miss the campus life, they call it. Yeah, tap on that, because students who are able to relate to that their themselves as social being, what we need to do is to actually create create the situation where they can socialize. You know, let me give you an example, which I will give you one case study at the end, but just to give you a rough idea. Our students, some of them, because they come from various background, they might go to schools, either they are co-ed schools or single-sex schools or religious schools. So sometimes entering the university, that's the first time they see the opposite sex, you know, and they're in that period of young adulthood where I'm not going to talk about Erickson's theory, but the psychosocial, the social emotional development of the adult is that's the time when they're going to, you know, see themselves as a catch, or they see someone else as a catch. So some of these students have problems to communicate. And we have our learning cluster, which is actually related to interpersonal or personal. Now with the MQF 2.0 is that, yeah? In the MQF 1.0, it was the social skill. Some of them could not even speak and utter and start a conversation with another stranger. And they are in the university. You know, so the social interaction can happen if you come from a family or from the family background is a kind that allows you to speak up your mind. But if they come from that situation where they hardly see the opposite sex, or they're not allowed to speak their mind, chances are they will falter here. Now, if we do not teach them or do not provide the opportunities for them to actually in the classroom brush up their skills on the social interaction, how can they do that when they are outside? I mean, once they leave the program, how are they going to survive? How are they going to survive in the career in their career world? And that's the reason why some of them could not even pass through their interview, job interview, simply because they can't even utter a word. They have never done that. They have been quiet. They've had successfully been quiet since standard 1 till year 4 of their program. But they are social beings. They can interact. But if we do not allow them to interact, our assessment does not allow them to interact. We do not assess them based on their ability to interact. That's where we will always have problems. The next thing that we also need to know that they're also the product of the environment, in the sense that they are thinking being, they are able to reflect. But how they reflect will depends on how they were taught. Yeah. So in your classroom, if you do not have sessions where they can reflect on what they have learned, they will never be able to ace the ability to think critically. And we do have cognitive skills, we have high order thinking skills, but in our classroom, it was just them jotting down notes. Where do they do the reflection? Where do they start unpacking whatever that they understand and unpacking whatever that they have received from the interaction in the classroom or from the lesson in the classroom, if we don't allow them to do reflection? And reflection can become part of assessment. It can. And especially so if your course is actually related to cognitive skills or ethics, those requires people to do reflection. And so adults, how they do it, what they do when they're learning, they take hold, they do all these 3 aspects. They rely on their prior experiences. If they don't understand, usually it's their peers that they interact. And sometimes, yeah, they reflect. So combining these elements creates a cluster effect, which has a synergistic effect on learning. So you need to make sure that whatever that you do during your delivery, as well as assessment, is for you to tap on these 3 elements, so that our students will be able to ace whatever skills that come your way your students will be able to ace it. So the question for you, or for not just for you, for me and you, for us, is how can we as instructors create adult learning experiences for our learners? How can we do that? So according to Malcolm Knowles, adults, they learn better if they know why they need to know. So Prof. Rosli, if you have students who do not have expectations, the reason probably because they don't know why they are there in the classroom in the first place. They probably chose the last option. That's the one that they got, that's the one given to them, the program that was given to them. So we need to explain to them not we need to explain, they need to see the point of how whatever program that they're in, and how is it actually related to them. When I did that study on STEM, that's on related on tertiary program, and I interviewed this student who's doing microbiology. Marine biology. And when I interviewed her and I said, did you ask for this program? She said, no. I had problems in the first 2 semesters. No, I had problems in the beginning. I cried every day because I don't like the course. It's so difficult. I was running away from a factual based course, and this one I have got to remember all the different microbes and whatever beings in the sea. Until in her second semester, which is still year 1, her lecturer brought her to the ocean, to the sea. They were doing snorkeling. And I would love to be in that class. They were doing snorkeling, and they actually, he just like, okay, just observe whatever living beings that's in the sea from where you all are, and everybody has got to draw whatever that they have found, and it's through their drawing that became the stimulus for their discussion for a few good weeks. And basically that was all about the introduction to microbiology, I guess. I don't know. Marine biology, sorry. And it's because of that second semester event made her feel that although she put that program as the last choice, she's glad that she got that program, because in the first place, she didn't know what the program was all about. It just sounds nice. So that's the reason why she put it in her option, in one of her options. And when she was able to do all those things, she felt, wow, this is the second semester. And when the lecturer said, you're supposed to only go to the sea when you're in year 3, but I'm actually exposing you to this notion so that you get a glimpse of what you're doing, and that made her understood, why she needs to know all the courses related to marine biology, because she fell in love with marine biology in her second semester because of that lecturer. Self-concept. When treated as someone who is capable and self-directed, adults will develop autonomy in learning where they are responsible for decisions and directions. So don't treat your students like children. They're not. They're adults. Treat them with respect. Treat them that they are capable of making decisions, because if we treat them as someone who is not capable of making any decisions, that's why they come again and again and again to you to ask whether they are right or they are wrong. Autonomy means they are able to do decisions because of the informed decision, because of certain justification. And that's the reason why when we design our delivery or our assessment, we always ask questions: where do you get the facts? How do you justify your argument? So basically, that's developing the self-concept. When they are able to see what they can do, what they are able to obtain from doing the activities in the classroom, or when you're providing them with the assignment or the assessment or the task, it will develop their identity as someone who is capable of making good decisions. Life experiences. Adults have a lot to share and learn better from others during sharing sessions. That's why in your classroom, like what I do now, when I was the dean, actually, I'm glad I'm not a dean. When I was the dean, I didn't have to teach. So I missed teaching a lot at that time in that 2 years. But now that I'm actually the director of University Teaching Learning Center, I'm now starting to teach again. And what I do now with my students, in my 3 hours of, because I teach postgraduate, so we've got 3 hours of lecture. Instead of that 3 hours me lecturing, what I do is that 3 hours is them doing work. You know, if we ever need to do a synchronous activity, it's them doing it. It's not me. So I don't have problems students being disengaged because it's the students who's got to be there. I wouldn't have problems me being disengaged because I've got to listen to whatever that they're saying in order to make that connection and ask them questions, you know, to probe their presentation when they're presenting, or their ideas when they're presenting the ideas. Right. The next is motivation. This is where the internal versus external motivation comes in. Now, we know that all of us as human, we like being given reinforcement. So reinforcement is actually external factor. It's not really good because once the reinforcement ends, chances are you will not do it. You know, for example, maybe people might not like this when I'm giving you this example, but let's just give this example nevertheless. Now we have lots and lots of incentives for publication because we want people to write, right? So we give a lot of incentives. So people write because of the external motivation that they get, the incentive. The minute you remove the incentive, people don't write anymore. That's because they didn't write in the first place because they like it. They wrote for the incentive. Now, what we need to do is actually to create scholars or people who write because they want to write. Then it becomes intrinsic in nature. They don't need any form of reinforcement. They do it because they love it. Now, our students need to get that intrinsic motivation when they're learning. I know it's not easy, but if they usually what we'll do is we'll start with external factor, and from that external factor, we make them realize that they have already, it's in them. You feel that they are actually getting a lot from it. That's why it's already part of their life. So that becomes intrinsic. Okay, if I can give you an example. Before this, I've got students, when I was teaching undergraduate students, when I asked them, who in this classroom really wants to become a teacher? I get a good 30 odd hands out of the 120 students in the classroom. But coming to the education program, you've got to go through a series of things, you know, like you've got to sit for your maths test, and then you come for the interview. They all pass, you know, so they can actually tell you whatever that you want to listen. They can do whatever that you want them to do because they are externally motivated. Who is motivating them? Their parents. Their parents want them to become teachers. It's not them. Now, my task is actually to change that 100 or 90 students, if it's 120 class, 90 odd students, to make sure that they are in for the program, because that's going to be their career, for God's sake. And if they don't like becoming a teacher, they're going to make other people's lives suffer for the rest of their lives. You know, as long as they are in the teaching profession, they are going to make all their students' lives miserable because they don't like the teaching profession and they're not doing it for the right thing. Now, moving them towards internal intrinsic motivation, I had to start with the extrinsic first to make sense of what it is to become a teacher, get them involved in activities where they are actually teaching people, get them reflecting about their emotion when they see people transform because of whatever that they're doing, feeling great about it, sensing that they can make a difference, and now asking them again, do they want to become a teacher? And I can actually see the transformation. So that's what I'm trying to say. You have to design in such a manner that you start off with extrinsic motivation, but you have to move them towards the intrinsic motivation, because it's the intrinsic motivation that will make them last long despite all the challenges. And the next one is orientation to learning. They do not like being lectured. They like to solve problems because they are life-centered. They're not subject-centered. Subject-centered will be in schools. Life-centered, they want problems. They are very engaged in task-oriented, given the task. So because they are problem and task-oriented, we need to make sure that our delivery during our activities, we have such tasks, and during the assessment that we provide, it's a problem-based assignment. Either you can call it whatever, but it's basically they're solving something. They're that task is actually helping them to make that connection, right? So that they can see the applicability of whatever that they're learning in their real world environment. And they are keen to learn when they see the relevance in learning, and of course in immediately, when they can see whatever that they're doing is actually benefiting to them immediately. Just like the second semester marine biology student who saw those little thing in the sea and going and now making senses that whatever that she's learning in the classroom is making sense to her real world, you know, and herself. So that's why we have to design our alternative assessment according, taking all this into consideration. So the basic principles of adult learning will be, we have to encourage our learners to become self-directed and autonomous. We tap on their experiences. We allow them to share their experiences because it's valuable. And when you are able to let them share their experiences, when they feel that whatever that they're saying is beneficial to everybody, it has some credit, that's where they have value. That's where you pull them from the extrinsic motivation to the intrinsic motivation. In terms of relevance, they can see the utility and the need and the meaningfulness of whatever that they're doing. In terms of motivation, as I mentioned just now, we have to move them from the extrinsic motivation to become intrinsic. And if they can see the applicability, that means they can see that whatever problems that they are solving is actually real world problems. That makes learning meaningful to them. Because the ultimate aim of any education, regardless of any stage, is actually to win the hearts and mind of our students. And how do we do that? Cognitively, where we look at the head in order to create intellectual beings. Affectively, where we are looking at the heart to instill values in enriching the soul. And psychomotor, we're actually looking at how they can be developed as contributing citizens. All this while, we have been focusing on the head. We need now to start looking at the heart and at the hand. And that's the reason why we have Sulam, service learning, where we want to ensure that they can actually see the relevance of the course in contributing to the citizens. But you don't have to declare your course as a service learning in order to do that. You can actually, through your case study, to ask them to contribute to citizens. You can, through your poster presentation, ask them to for suggestions to how to contribute to citizens. You don't need, not all the programs need to go for service learning. It's not that only those programs that can only talk about how to contribute to citizens or to the community. All courses has that possibilities. It's just a matter of us being a little bit creative in order to, in our own way, to make that connection, to help the students see that connection, so that they will appreciate whatever that they are learning. And the most important thing is to enrich the soul. What's the point of them getting an A for accountancy and yet doing corruption? Probably we didn't do enough tarbiyah, I might say, in the class, to understand, what values do you have? Because it appears to us as if it's effective, but that value makes them, it makes them their identity. It becomes part of them. It becomes their principle in their later lives. And that's why we begin with the end in mind. We have the niat, which is actually the outcome. That's why, in fact, the outcome is actually our akad. We already say in our course that by the end of the course, students will be able to. So that's exactly what it is. So you have your niat. Then we got to make sure that they are stimulated in terms of their head, their mind, in terms of their body, hand, and especially their soul. Because what we have to do in education is to conjure the higher mental function, that means thinking being, and the ethical values that influence the actions of a civilized human. We have to make sure that no matter what program you do, you are going to produce students who value their dignity, value their principles, because you have taught them well what is right and what is wrong, rather than just what is going to come out in the exam. And that's the reason why in your delivery, never forget to educate your student, to encourage them to think, encourage them to do good so that they can feel good, and be good as well. Any questions so far? Thumbs up if you're still around, because I can't see you anymore because now I've got to switch off. Okay, good. Right. So now we're going to the next section. Yeah. So that's basically what our learners can do, what our learners are capable to do. They are adult learners. They can do that. Now, how do we now tap them? How do we now ensure that they can be what they are made to be? So choosing the meaningful alternative assessment, and the reason why I'm focusing on alternative assessment, because that's what we're doing today. It's about assessment, but I'm going to touch on delivery as well as the assessment, because in assessment there are what we call formative assessment as well as summative assessment. And the way I look at things, when you are doing your delivery, that's when you try to provide as much as possible the formative assessment so that your students get feedback before you give them the summative assessment, which is the assessment that's going to be counted in the overall performance. And I'm sure whoever who have listened to me speaking last year would have seen this before. I'm just going to go through, just in case people don't know what's alternative assessment. So basically, it is for performance based. It is authentic in nature. You can use most people use portfolio or e-portfolio. They focus on the writing samples, but the writing samples is not just mere reports and proposal, which is the normal way, but you can actually use bulletin and journals and blogs, or blogs or even websites, whatever. And it's open-ended. There is no one fixed answer. It requires multiple ways of solving the problem, and that's the beauty of it, because that's where the sharing session will help them to learn from each other and to improve themselves, and to have and to realize that they have transformed because of the sharing session. They feel good, basically, being human. When we do good, I mean, if you help someone, well, try and help someone today and see what I'm trying to tell you now. But the minute you help someone, it makes you feel good about yourself, right? So the same way, when your students are actually doing this task and they're sharing with each other, and they're providing and getting feedback from each other, and they're learning from each other, it gives them joy actually to see that what their thinking matters, their friends' thinking matters, and they get the recognition from the lecturer. So they are getting all this beautiful vibes, yeah, from everybody. That actually improves their how shall I say, their existence, you know, as a university student. Right. Okay, that's not a question, right? Okay. And when you are allowing them to do sharing sessions and they are providing the feedback, so that's what we call peer assessment. And when you're asking them to reflect, remember I told you about they come in naturally being people who can reflect. So if you're allowing them to reflect, basically that's about self-assessment. How do they see themselves? What weaknesses do they have? What they need to improve? What are they going to do? So basically by doing that, you are actually creating not only their ability to reflect, ability to become independent, responsibility, they are also able to become self-directed because they know they self-regulated as well. They know what they need to do because of certain things that they're not happy with. And when they're providing feedback to their friends, it's not about you rub my back and I'll rub yours. You know, it's about becoming critical friends. Critical friends do not mean people who like to critique and make your life miserable and using condescending tone. No, those are not the kind of friends that, I mean, those are not the kind of behavior that we're talking about here. Critical friends here means they provide the support, but the way in which they say to improve, you know, basically they will start saying, I like how you did this. Perhaps you can do this. That is the way in which a critical friend provide criticism, not in a condescending tone. Yeah. So when we are deciding on the alternative assessment, the first thing that we need to do is actually to think in terms of the basic principles of assessment, which is fairness, reliable, valid. So we've got to look at who our students are, what is their learning outcome. That's why the reason why I'm saying that you have to look at where your students are, because you need to see whether how much do you have to provide that intervention in order for them to meet that learning outcome. It's not that you reduce, you don't lower the learning outcome. The learning outcome that you have in the syllabus is actually the standard. You cannot lower that down. That's the standard of the curriculum that has been set part of your program. But what you need to do is to see where are your students in order for you to figure out what kind of intervention that you need to do, what kind of activities that they would have to do, how many times of formative assessment that needs to be provided in order for them to be able to reach the standard. Because you have already stated that by the end of the course, your students will be able to achieve those learning outcomes. In terms of the real world context, the closer and the more authentic it is, the better. So creating it allows the students to connect the theory into practice. So allowing your students to engage with the community, asking your students, if you're teaching language, you want them to learn instead of the normal subject-verb agreement, you want to ask them to interview real people, and from the transcription of the interview, they start writing, subject-verb agreement in that manner. It helps them to see why they need to learn the language better than when they are being taught grammar. Yeah. So connecting knowledge into context is crucial so that they will see the value. Once they see the value, where they see that they can perform, it increases their motivation. They have the goal. So that's how the circle of trajectory of learning will happen. Okay. Yeah, true, Dr. Adam. That's why I'm saying not through the condescending tone. Condescending tone will be like, what is this? Is this the way, the way you say it? I don't know how to do this condescending tone, but you will know, the minute the people speak to you, you feel as if that you're not clever. That's basically, if you know that, that means the person has actually used the condescending tone. People who who are critical friends, they don't use condescending tone. They use nice tones, provide you with the support, yet give you the areas in which they think it will be better for you to improve. And you won't feel slighted. In fact, you will feel appreciated that person has actually said that to you. Then you know that that's your critical friend. Don't let that friend go away. Right, creative solutions. There are many ways to solve problems, very suitable for alternative assessment. That's why in life, in our life, you know now that we have more than one way to solve a problem, right? Look at the vaccine. There's all sorts of vaccines coming in. So there are lots of solutions to one problem. So that's the reason why we need to make sure that we create our alternative assessment to allow that there are various ways, and what you want to see is on what grounds do they solve the problems. And by sharing the way in which they solve the problems, they can now see which of the solution is the right way forward. Collaborative learning, especially when you have soft skills that's related to teamwork, leadership, ethics, that's just brilliant for you to allow them to work in groups, and therefore you need to assess them working in groups as well. And that's the reason why you need, when you're doing alternative assessment, you will have to have rubric, which must have the criteria that's related to the learning outcome, and also related to the instruction based on the topics that has been assigned to the learning outcome. And as I said just now, formative assessment is when your students will receive feedback when you're doing alternative assessment, so that they will know where they are going. They have some form of guidance so that they will be able to see how they can improve themselves, how they can continue what good that they are doing before they are actually being assessed in the summative assessment. So I hope everybody is clear about what is formative assessment and what summative assessment. So formative assessment is not counted in your students' overall performance. It's just merely you giving them feedback. So you can create, if you're creative enough, you can create many activities, which is not really the same, but still focusing on the same course learning outcome, and same rubric, but different topics. So you can actually provide all sorts of tasks, but they're still using the same rubric. And you can ask them to do self-assessment, peer assessment. You can provide them with the feedback as well. So what are they trying? What are they getting from all these activities that you have in the classroom? They are getting a lot of experiences, yeah, and they're learning from their mistakes if they did mistakes. So they're learning from their mistakes, and to improve on that before they can actually show you what they're able to do. So understanding the types of alternative assessment and understanding the way in which our adults learners learn, now we have to start with our activities. Wait, hang on a minute. Before you actually do your activities, I have to stop sharing for a minute, because I need to show you the right one. Okay. All right, can you scan this so that you'll be able to do the next activity? Dr. Rosli still waiting for example of rubric to assessing soul. In not so many ways, I've been giving you hints about how the soul works, but well, bear with me and I'll try to make sure that you don't feel that you're not getting it yet. Okay, has everybody done it? Thumbs up, please, if you've done. Okay, thank you. If that's the case, let's just show. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So this is the learning outcome, yeah? Compare developmental theories in human lifespan development. And if that is your learning outcome, what would be the suitable alternative assessment for the learning outcome? So some of you have actually said presentation, course dependent. Can someone explain what this course dependent means? What do you mean by course dependent? Sorry? Okay. I think the internet connection is truly bad, right? Is it on my side or whose side here? Can you hear me well?
Yes, yes, we can hear you, Prof.
Okay, okay. Right. Some of you have actually said rubric as a suitable alternative assessment. Is rubric actually alternative assessment or is it a tool? So, okay, let me see. Portfolio, okay. Survey. What kind of survey? What do you mean by survey? Anybody who wrote the survey? Are you going to ask questions to whom? Who are you going to ask the question? Everybody's quiet now. Right. Who wrote the survey? That's going to be the better way of dealing with this, right? What do you mean by survey? Oh. So never mind. I will just ask you to do the next one then. The next one is the same code. You will have the next question appearing in your this question. It's the same code, 6883787. Maybe while waiting for people to respond, anybody wants to ask any questions? Those who have actually responded? It's still loading. Perhaps I think Miss Christine, perhaps you can switch off your video so that it'll be not too heavy for you, because I know WebEx you tend to have lagging because of the video on. That would probably help.
Yes, I have turned my video, Prof. Oh, she probably can't hear.
Is that it? It's just 29 people in the session. How many people are there? Oh,
145.
we've got 145. What happened to 111? It's very quiet in USM compared to other universities, eh?
Prof,
Yes,
can I ask you another question?
sure.
Okay, Prof. This is based on my experience and also based on my observation. I
Yes.
think why the student don't want to ask question is one of the main reason is because of English. They don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to throw the idea. Actually, they have really good idea. Student like, when I have physical class, I'm the person that like to walk around. Sometimes I found that my student, they play game while listening to my lecture, but it's fine for me. For me, it's fine because that if some people, they can do something, they are multitasking person, right? They listen to my lecture or they in my class, but they still can do something else. I never met at them. Sebab saya percaya orang muda ni macam-macam, sebab saya pun macam tu juga dulu. Okay. Tapi entertain them. I asked them what kind of game that you like, and I found that when we in touch with them, and some of them, they get really good score, but they in class, they don't really pay attention. I call this kind of student professor. And I found that maybe in the second, the student don't really give feedback, but in the third and fourth year, they are stay, at the front row, because they feel that saya bagi tumpuan lah kepada dia kan. So how we want to make sure that we can increase the student confidence to make sure that they can communicate in class, and what kind of setup that we can make for the student to feel that they are welcome to join the class and welcome to join the discussion.
Itulah, if I can share my experience teaching large classes. How many students do you have in your class?
100 plus.
Okay. So baguslah example ni. When I started teaching undergraduate way long, more than 10 years ago, they were like that, 120 very quiet students who kita tanya soalan, one or two students will respond, and usually those students are right in front of you, and the rest of them, they show you physical appearance as if they understand what you're talking about, but the minute you start asking them, throwing questions to them or giving them an activity, they go activity. Masa tu I tak bagi activity. It was just question and answer. That's why I know question and answer and lecture it will not work. Until one day, because I teach education psychology, it's full of theories, and these people will get all the theories mixed up. Okay. And yes, education psychology books are all in English, and that's even worse because the students will have problems. They will put aside the book, and they will they will you know, get the Malay version of the book, which is usually not enough. You know, it's not enough for them to understand the theory. So how do I go about doing it? That's when I started making group work. That's when I started asking them to work in groups of 6, because there are 6 theories. Everyone has got to take one theory, and then we do jigsaw. Do you know jigsaw? So we did jigsaw activities in the classroom. It was chaotic because the class is a mass lecture hall. It's not conducive at all for student-centered learning. But I had to do it because if not, the students will not do well in their exam, because at that time, that course was the final exam is actually the MCQ, you know, the multiple choice questions. If you know it, you know it, and the answers are there. Answers are there enough to confuse the students if they don't study. Everything sounds right if they don't study. So so they didn't do well, and I was like very unhappy, because education psychology should be the foundation of all teachers. They need to understand that the theory and understand how the theory makes sense to them as future teachers, so that they will be able to understand their learners. So that's how I started using mind map. And only sometimes we did jigsaw, we did role play, we did mind map in the classroom, in the mass lecture hall, where they will start presenting to each other. That's how I got the quiet people speak, because they have to speak. We made in such a manner that everybody will take turns to speak. Six of them there will be 6 rounds. So everybody in the group will be speaking for every group. Oh, sorry. See, I get excited. And some of them, what I did was I had to break the class into quadrant. There's quadrant A, quadrant B, quadrant C, quadrant D. So when I say swap quadrants, the quadrant A and B and C and D will swap, and then swap quadrant again, A and C, you know, diagonal, and then between A and D and all that. So they had very few rounds of presentation. And the reason why I'm doing that is so that they can remember the theories, listening to other people. So I'm tackling the auditory people, tackling the visual, because they're doing mind map. So some people can easily remember things when it's colorful and it's designed in such a certain way. So it helps them to remember. Some people listen. So when they're presenting, they're actually listening. And for those who actually cannot sit still because they have to move, they were moving from one quadrant to the other quadrant. You know, the ones who remain in their respective poster, if I may call it was just an A3 paper. If the ones who stays at their own poster is the one who's supposed to be presenting for the group. Remember I said there are 6 times that they're going to present? That is one of the examples of how I made everybody have to speak in the classroom. And at that time, education psychology, education courses, you can still use Bahasa Melayu. But I told my students, because I can handle it, so let's use English language, so that you are learning 2 things. You're also learning English language, and you're also learning education psychology. The reason being so that they feel confident that they can say a word or 2 in English, and they can present. And I'm not teaching the language class. It's okay if they got the grammar and the way in which they say things, or the way in which they pronounce things wrong. It's okay as long as I can understand what they're talking about. Because my niyat was not to teach them English language. My niyat was just to actually give them the opportunity to use the language, so that by the time that was in their first semester, because education psychology is the core papers. So usually it's offered in the first semester. So that they start off the program with a kind of standard and expectation. You know, that, wow, coming to this program, I have to speak English, I've got to do active learning, and okay, I'll be excited. Well, I do pray to God that that all my colleagues after that follow suit, but I cannot control that. But as far as I'm concerned, when they are in my classroom, that's exactly what I have to do, which means I have to start thinking about ways in which they will take turns to speak. I will listen to them. And those were the times when we didn't have all these gadgets of flip grade lah, apa lah. We don't have all those things. Now, we have those Web 2.0 tools, which they can actually self-record themselves presenting, and I can actually listen to them whenever. You know, it doesn't have to be in the classroom. But at that time, I use the classroom time for them to do the presentation. How do I give the lecture at the end? At the end, I just ask them questions like, so what was Piaget's theory? And everybody starts raising their hands because all of them knew by then what's Piaget's theory. Everybody wants to tell everyone that I know. I like to ask, to tell what I know about it, you know. So, and we had well, I had to motivate them by, you know, clapping hands and you know, give them chocolates if I have to. Remember, I told you from the extrinsic to the intrinsic. And at the end, how do I know that they have reached the intrinsic? It's through the reflection. That's when they write to me. And some of them, I told them you can write in BM, but some of them insist that they want to write to me in English to show that they actually, they're trying their best to actually use the language. And of course they will say, you know, saya mengharapkan nanti saya akan dapat bercakap macam doktor ni. Tak apalah. At least they have expectation, they have a goal. Not that I'm perfect, but yeah. We have to create the sense where they can see that they're actually progressing, that before this they cannot utter a word of, you know, they're so embarrassed to speak to everybody, but because of the task, they have no choice, but they've got to speak. Not only we did that, we did role plays too. In another course, which is child and adolescent psychology, all my students, they are undergraduate students, they're not married, so they don't know about parenting style, but I have to teach them about parenting style. There are 4 types of parenting style, and they successfully confuse them. And again, I have a problem, and I thought that was so easy for them to actually know the different types of parenting style, but not to the students. So how to make them understand? I put all the resources in the learning. Long time ago, we had this LMS called Learning Care. So I put it in the Learning Care for them to actually look at the resources. That means the description of the various parenting style in the classroom. They do role play, and when they do role play, they are not allowed to tell their friends what their parenting types was. Their friends have to guess. So we draw lots. I mean, they had to draw the lots, and then from there they do the role play. But they realized not only they have to know before they can do the role play, they have to know what the parenting styles are, what are the characteristics, in order for them to role play well, so that their friends can actually guess it right. All I need to do was just to give them. There were 30 groups altogether presenting. Because there are 4 of them in a group. All I need to do is it's just like a quiz. Number 1, what's the answer? Number 2, what's the answer? Until number 30. So they have to guess. And then from there we discuss, why is it that parenting style, you know, that's where they start discussing, they start challenging their friends. You didn't do it well. You know, this type of parenting style, you have to show it like this. So they were discussing about the characteristics. Now, because they were discussing about the characteristics to comment about how their friends role play, they remember what the parenting styles were. That's what I mean. You can allow your students to speak. I know it's difficult. It's difficult now because of the online thingy. The only way that you can do, if you all are my students, I would ask everyone to register so that I can actually see who is responding and who's not. But because this is, you know, it's an open floor kind of thing, I cannot force. But for the students, I can. If I know that there are 120 students and the other 47 are not, only 47 responding, I can do something about it. And I can actually say, come on, everybody. You can do better than this, you know. So yeah, in an online, I know it's a bit challenging because it's, all these things are relatively new to us, you know. But if it's in the classroom, in a normal classroom, you definitely can do, because you can actually tell who is actually speaking and who is actually not speaking. Any more questions? Is that okay, Dr. Rosli?
Thank you, Prof. Yes, very good. Thank you very much.
No problem. Okay, any more? Anyone else wants to ask? The beauty part of that parenting style, that's where that was like a formative assessment. So that's kind of an alternative assessment, right? You just now you all wrote role play as one of the alternative assessment. And the kind of like the quiz-like form that I gave to them, 1 to 30, was the answer to the role play that they have to guess. And the discussion that follows suit was about fine-tuning if there were any misconception, and making sure that they really understand the characteristics of the different types of parenting. But the beauty part of it, the soul part of it, is when you get questions from your students asking, you know, doctor, my parents, I think if I reflect back, they are all authoritarian. So if we read this with this Baumrind way of explaining, we have to be authoritarian. We have to be authoritative. You know, they are already considering and evaluating in and applying to their context. You know, their own personal context, because they've already understood. Once they have understood, they will naturally do that. The course outline, the course learning outcome was nothing to do with application. It was just about identifying the characteristics of role play. The characteristics of parenting style. But they are able to actually do that reflection. That is the soul that I'm talking about here. They can actually see that whatever that they're learning is going to benefit them in the future when they become parents themselves. What kind of parents, what kind of parenting style are they going to adopt? Although they have experienced a different kind of parenting style, because they have actually looked at the implication, they have studied the implication. How do they know about the implication? Their friends were acting it out. You know, the implication of those parenting styles towards the children in the context in which they were doing the role play. So they were seeing cases. If you think that those are the role plays are like little snippets of cases, there were 30 cases that they were looking. Different people are doing the different types of role play. I mean, you can have the same type of parenting style, but different groups will have different take on it. You know, different perspective on doing the role play.
Hello.
Abstract and logical thinking of what do you mean by that? Abstract and logical thinking of abstract thinking. What does that mean?
Yeah, I can click there. It's connected.
If you can unmute yourself and ask me that question, what do you mean by logical and abstract thinking? What course are you teaching?
Later when it's available there.
I need to look at the chat now. Johnny Lim. Any suggestions of alternative assessment? There are many theorems. Okay, so you're teaching mathematics, right? Are you teaching mathematics? Yeah, okay. I've got a friend who actually who was actually an ACRI winner last year, Prof. Haslinda. She is from the School of Quantitative Science. She teaches theorems and mathematics, fuzzy logic actually. And don't ask me what fuzzy logic is. Maybe Johnny Lim can explain. But what she did was she she didn't have her maths class in the classroom. She had her math class in the Pusat Sukan. They had to run, they had to take some, they had to do some data collection. They did dancing. Can you imagine learning mathematics through dancing? So she was using all these different kinds of methodology to help the students see the connection of why the world is such that fuzzy logic or whatever she was talking about. I can't remember. I might be saying something wrong. Whatever the theorem is relevant. How the theorem becomes relevant because our world is like this. So she was just showing to the students, it's through your movement, your unpredictable movement, and it's through your unpredictable ability to run, on time or not on time, gives you different data, and from that data gives you this when you plot it into a diagram, it becomes like like that. Then she connects it to the theorem. I mean, look up on I think she did a sharing session with IIUM quite recently about her work, so probably you can have a look at what she was doing, but that was definitely that was definitely about logic, abstract thinking, but she still made the students feel relevant in whatever that they're doing, although it looks like mathematics, but they were doing something that they normally do anyway, but now they're using the knowledge to understand better, And in fact, this particular semester, she's actually even asking the students to do a newsletter, a magazine, to showcase, to explain about how using their everyday life observation and using the the theorem to actually solve and make sense of the data. Right, looks like after series of waiting, looks like there are only 48 who wants to answer this. Okay, so looks like not bad. Everybody knows what rubric is. They've used rubric before, and not a bad figure that you have actually used the rubric. You have developed the rubric on your own, because usually people use the rubric that's developed by others, which is naturally what the data shows in the next line. Some of you have actually used alternative assessment, though many have not. So many probably have used or still hope to use high-stake exams. And significant number have actually made an effort to understand the students. So that's fine, although it's not all 145 people in this session, but at least at least we know we know that out of that 45 people, you kind of know what rubric is all about. So I'm not going to focus much on the rubric development. I'm just going to go very quickly, since almost everyone knows what rubric is. So it's basically criteria based on students' performance. It's supposed to measure students' performance, usually used for alternative assessment. There are two types of rubric, either holistic or analytic. And whatever that you choose, you have to make sure that it goes back to the course learning outcome. And though it is it's a rubric, you still need to do what we call validation of the rubric, if you can. That will be extremely brilliant, so that you know that the measuring tool is something that you can use many times. So when do you? So again, in a nutshell, what you term as rubric will be, scoring, making the qualitative description and quantifying it. Okay, because you're going to give them the score based on their qualitative performance, right? And you show your students the rubric well in advance. You don't keep that rubric. They need to know what the rubric, you need to show them the rubric, because the rubric is actually your expectation. Remember just now when Dr. Rosli says how the students don't come in with expectation. Well, the rubric will help them. The rubric becomes the environmental mediation. Tadi kan Prof. Karim told me about my area is actually mediated learning. So one of the types of mediation is actually environmental mediation. The rubric itself can become environmental mediation, where if the students do not have an expectation, the rubric forces them to have some form of expectation. Do they expect to get 1 out of the 5 scale? Do they expect to get 1 or 5, 3 or 4, or is it just 2? So they have a choice. They have a choice to decide based on their expectation. What do they want to do? Because whatever that they do will fulfill the qualitative criteria that is set in the rubric, and that's the score that they will get eventually. And as far as possible, try to include the authenticity of the authenticity criteria in the rubric. And yeah, so the expectation of the rubric is basically an expectation. It consists of standards that is mapped according to one's level of expertise from novice to advanced. Novice means 1 to advanced 5. So the process of doing the rubric, if for those who did not respond and might have problems coming up with the rubric, you can actually observe by using examples from your previous students' work to set a benchmark, especially if it's still related to the course learning outcome. And then from there, you come up with the performance and the categories and the kind of performance that you would require. And then you set the level of performance. That means the standard, whether it is exceptionally meets the standard, or meet the standard, or below the standard. And that's the scale that we're talking about here. And then we start designing. Designing here, for each of the standard, there must be some form of category, right? And the criteria. And then you write the statements to define the characteristics. Of course, if it is analytic, the criteria has got to be very precise, whereas holistic, it's generic. And finally, once your rubric is done, it would be brilliant if you can actually do some form of analysis of your students' work in order to see whether was the rubric a good tool to actually be used to measure your students' performance. So when you're developing your rubric, the first thing that you need to do is actually to look at your course learning outcome. Never forget your course learning outcome. And then now we also have learning clusters because of the MQF 2.0. Long time ago, it was the social skills. So I call it skills. So it's just the same. So you've got to take that into consideration, because your course must have been assigned to certain learning clusters. So you need to make sure that when you're developing the rubric based on the course learning outcome, you also need to consider the learning cluster. Then look at your syllabus, because your course learning outcome would have been mapped to the topics in your course. So the topics is actually your context, the context in which you're going to come up with your alternative assessment. And then once you've already understood the topics, the next is actually the thinking about the task, which is what kind of engaging and meaningful activities. As I mentioned just now, you can do all sorts of things, the role play, project, singing, dancing. So you have to start thinking about what will be the most meaningful and engaging tasks that your students do in order to provide evidence of learning. And then assessing the abilities, which means it needs to be clear about what is to be assessed, and to decide whether it is going to be holistic or analytic in nature, and whether you are allowing your students for self-assessment and peer assessment during formative assessment, or summative assessment if you are brave enough. and so on and so forth. So if you're wondering what is analytic and what is holistic, regardless whether it is analytic or holistic, you begin with the course learning outcome. Let's look at the holistic first. If you're deciding to do a holistic type of rubric, you provide the holistic perspective of assessment. That means it's very generic, and it's suitable for tasks that do not have a fixed answer. All right. So the reason why you cannot come up with the right criteria because you're not sure of the criteria yourself. Not that you're not sure, it can be anything. So that's the reason why you're opening for possibilities as long as they are able to justify. Next is to provide overall judgment of the performance. So whether you feel based on their whatever that they have shown to you, whether they on a scale of 1 to 3, 1, 2 being low and 1, 2, 3. So 1 being low, 2 medium, and 3 excellent. You can provide your overall judgment. And when do you use holistic? It's when you want to give an overall feedback where you want to show what your students can do. You're not that much concerned about what the students cannot do. So basically you are looking at what your students can do and you're providing the marks based on what they can do. Whereas analytic, yes, you begin with the learning outcome, and then you must identify the characteristics that's needed for the assessment. That means you look at the learning outcome as well as the topics and the context. And then and when is this analytic kind of rubric suitable? It's suitable when it's used for problem solving activities. So if you're using problem-based analysis or certain skills, you can actually use analytic rubric, because in those situations you probably have clear standards and characteristics. You know what are the characteristics that you are looking for, right? When you describe, when the CLO is compare, for example, you know what are the components that makes compare clear. Yeah, you have to identify what are the things that they're doing in order to exemplify the notion of compare. And finally, when you want your students to know their strengths and weaknesses so that they can improve. So basically, when you provide analytic, you will have, if it's like 5, the students will be able to do A, B, C. If in order for them, no, not 5. Let's just say 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1 means the students are not able to do. They're only able to do or attempt to do. So you get 1. 2, there are 3 elements. They only can give you 2. To get a full mark of 3, they can give you 3 elements of all elements, more than 3 elements. So that's what I mean. That's what it's meant here by the students will know what their weaknesses and what their strength based on the score that they get. So if they get 2, they know that they still did not ace it. They didn't get the criteria that the minimal criteria that is needed to complete the task. Any questions so far? Okay. What is the difference between motivation and interest? Well, interest is pretty much the same. It's just that interest has it's just a matter of preference. I want to do this, or I study in the morning or I study in the afternoon better. But when it comes to motivation, it's like a drive, you know. It gives you the goal and the expectation for you to want to do it. It's not because of you're interested to do it, but because you feel motivated to actually continue what you're doing. So there's preference as well as motivation. That's basically the difference. Okay, what else? Yeah, don't worry, I'm going to give you the notes later on. Can we combine the analytical scoring schemes and hosting in one rubric, or we do it separately? There is another the third type of rubric, which is actually combining both. You will have a clearer description of the criteria, but when it comes to marks, it's pretty much open in the sense that 1 to 5 is low, 6 to 10 is middle, and then 11 to 15 is high, or something like that. So it ranges. So when it ranges, it means holistic in nature, because analytic is very specific. You only get one score, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When it's a range, it's kind of like holistic in nature, but because it has characteristics, it has criteria, that's where the analytical bit comes in. So that's called single point rubric. But the ones that we commonly use will be either analytic or holistic. But you can combine if that's the question. Yeah, that's good, isn't it? That means people are allowing their babies and their children to also listen to this talk. Right. Let's see. What did I? Any more questions? Right. Before we go to the just saw one. Yeah. Nor Adelina. If there's a range of scores, it's holistic, because you kind of you're not determining the, if it's holistic, it's basically able to compare, able to, it's what they are able to do, and you're giving a score. You're giving that a score of either it's a low, middle, or high. Yeah. Whereas in analytic, it's very specific. Let me see if I can show you.
Sorry, Prof. Meaning that it's Adelina here. Meaning that if you have adequate, if you have what else you have? Good, and then you have that range, meaning that it is holistic. Because I always do that in the rubric.
I'll show you what I mean.
Okay.
In a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. This is what I mean by analytic rubric. You can see this, right?
Yes, I can see.
Okay. So analytic rubric, can you see that these are the categories? This is what I mean by when you have these categories, this is what you have to refer to your CLO. Your CLO, your learning cluster, this is where the category, this is where it will come. Okay. And of course, the task that you gave, because the task that you gave would have certain things that you would want them to do, which is related to the course learning outcome anyway. So that, you will have the various sections, the various criteria that you think will be relevant. For analytic, every section you will describe. The only difference is 1 being novice, that means 1 beginning, it's showing beginning level of performance, whereas 4 showing high level of performance. So that's analytic. Okay?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Then we have the holistic. Okay, can you see that? The holistic, okay, you can have a score, but the kind of description is not as specific as the analytic. Okay?
Yes. Okay, thank you, Prof.
Okay, hang on a minute. I got another one, which is
Okay.
actually called the single point rubric. This is the one that I think you are talking about here. Yeah. This is the combination of the criteria. They have the specific criteria,
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
but they also have a range. Can you see that? 0 to 80.
Yes.
Areas that need work. So you will focus on the weaknesses too. This
Yeah.
is where the analytic and the holistic is combined together.
Okay.
And for advanced, for 95 to 100, why do you think that the student is actually exceeding the standard?
Okay. Now I understand. Yeah. So just simply follow whatever in the internet. So I don't really understand before this. Thank you so much, Prof.
No problem. I have to share this. Yeah. No, it's not one I want to share. Switch it off. Yeah, this is what I wanted to share. Right. But okay, in order for us to understand the one before this, we do have the affective and the psychomotor, but at least make sure that we understand what the cognitive is. Yeah. So if we are talking about comparing, and that's the level, which ones are we talking about here? What is the learning taxonomy for the CLO that I have showed just now? Which one?
Sorry, Prof. Do you mind going back to the previous slide, please?
Yes, sure.
Thank
No
you.
problem. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Evaluating?
You sure? You sure it's evaluating?
Analyzing, compare.
Are you sure it's understanding?
Yeah, it's still remembering, analyzing, and understanding.
Yeah, so which one is it?
I will go with analyzing because you ask the student to compare.
Right. So this is what I mean by you got to be clear of your course learning outcome. You know, before we do the rubric, this is what it means by we need to know what does compare here means. What are the little components that we have? So I'm actually giving you the clue here. There's C4, A4, and the learning cluster is actually interpersonal skill. So this will be definitely when you're designing your rubric, this will be the criteria, C4, which means analyzing. So when they are analyzing, what do they need to do? Before they can analyze, what do they need to do? They can show that they can able to identify you. So when you're doing analyzing, you can have things about this, but of course you're not going to ask them. They can remember the theory. You know, you're not bothered with that anymore because that's it goes without saying. You can actually ask them. You can actually indicate that one of the criteria is they are able to draw conclusion from the theories. They're able to apply the theories into context, but what you're actually looking at is actually the ability for them to see, to make comparison, and to analyze based on the situation. Can you see that? So for C alone, you can have at least 3 or 4 criteria for C alone. And that's not including the A4, which is actually, what would A4 be? Actually, I shouldn't have asked you this question. I should have asked you.
The effective one, right? A4 is...
Yeah, the effective, correct.
But when you say criteria just now, Prof, 3 or 4 criteria, what do you mean by criteria?
Remember, if you are doing your what did I do? Stop sharing. I lost my file. What I mean by criteria is when you do your rubric, you would have actually decided upon your whether you want to do analytic or not, right? Let's just say if you're doing analytic. That's what I mean by the criteria lah, the category. Apa dia?
Okay,
What is it you're
understood.
looking at?
Analytic is what the student can and cannot do.
Right. Analytic is your standard. So in order to achieve that standard, what is the behavior that you want them to do? What is it that they are able to do? First, they're able to maybe explain to you the theory, because explain comes under understanding, right? Can. So they're able to explain the theory, they're able to compare the theory, they're able to use the theory, depending on your task. This is why I said depending on the task. If let's just say you give them a case study and you want them to compare of the between the two theories, how to solve the case, then they will have to do some form of comparison to see the strength and the weaknesses of the theory. So they're able to show the strength, they're able to show the weaknesses of the theory. It. Problem with
Enlarge your view. No, I'm talking to the audience. Sorry.
enlarge your view. Okay.
Memang tak nampak, but then you just like macam.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Is that okay now? Okay. So basically the category that I'm talking about here for C alone, you probably will have 1, 2, 3, just to make sure that you are able to measure the ability of the students to do the comparing. And the standard is actually analyzing. Ability for them to analyze. That's the standard of the learning taxonomy. And then we go to the A4. A4 will be on organizing values, right? So that's where I need you to do the next slide, the next question. Stop sharing for a minute. Yeah. I don't know what's happening to this, but let me just see if I can. Okay, if you can go to 83222091 again. Actually, it's in this. It have been this, I think. Is it this one?
Can I have the code, Prof? I don't really like scanning though.
This one. It's the code. I've inserted the code in the chat. That's the code for the Mentimeter. Yeah. Yeah, you will have lots of avatar here, flying rats or whatever. Okay, let's begin. Everybody, are we okay? I mean, can we just start this? Pretty much.
Sure.
People are still entering. Let's just see. The reason why I'm not sharing is I don't want people to be swayed with the other people's response. I'll show afterwards, okay? Right. So it looks like everybody can answer this. Is that it? Did you get all right? Anybody got all right? So the criteria to develop that particular course learning outcome just now, because of the C4, A4 and interpersonal skills, so you don't have to worry about personal skills. You have to look back at the course learning outcome. It says that it's got to be related to interpersonal skills. And because it is of higher level, which is actually C4, you can do the lower levels. You can identify components of the concept. So if they were identify components of the concept will be explaining the theories, that's fine. It's still considered as part of the criteria. Distinguish similarities and differences, yes, it's fine. It's still part of the similarities and the criteria. And because it has got the A4 for organizing values into priorities by contrasting different values, that's also accepted. And all of you are right, because none of you actually chose examine to make judgment, because making judgment will be the higher level of cognitive, which is not suitable for the course learning outcome. So this is what I mean by when you're doing your rubric, you've got to look back at your course learning outcome in order for you to be able to understand why certain skills must be there in your rubric. And once you've understood this is the time when you've got to start designing what kind of activities that I can actually, what kind of assessment that when I do, when I create, I can actually observe students doing improving their interpersonal skills. And of course, if you're not sure about how to look, excuse me, how to measure interpersonal skills, all you need to do is just look at ICGPA, the book that they did long time ago. You don't have to throw away those books. They had, excuse me, they had rubrics as a guideline. What we want to look at is not the rubrics, it's the attributes. What made up the interpersonal skills. So once you have the interpersonal skills, you can use it as the criteria. You are measuring interpersonal skills, but you are at the same time you are defining the criteria for the interpersonal skills. So far, so good. This is what I mean. Yeah, so personal skills is not related to this course learning outcome. So you don't have to use it in the rubric because you don't have to assess it. You can give comments about it, but you're not assessing it. You only assess when it's related to your course learning outcome. So if you refer to the course learning outcome, basically it's related to the interpersonal skills. It is related to identifying the components of the concept. It requires students to distinguish between the similarities and the differences before they can actually analyze which theories to be used. And they can also organize values because of the effective domain. Questions?
Pause here. You want to take a 5 minutes break?
Yeah, that would be good.
It's okay. Up to you because we want to get some drink.
Yeah, drink water. Yeah, thank you very much.
So maybe we can take a 5 minutes break.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. That would be good. Thanks.
So meanwhile, may I remind all the participants from USM inside WebEx for the CPD point, please make sure you fill up the survey or the borang penilaian at the end of the session. We will share the link for the borang penilaian, and please make sure you fill up that form. And only when you fill up the form, you can get the CPD point. Yeah. So I hope we have this understanding so that we can facilitate the process of giving the CPD point. Yeah. And hopefully there is no issue about CPD point. We want to make it easy for everyone. Yeah? And once again, so this is intermission while we take the break.
Yeah.
I just like to promote again the MOOC Challenge 2021. Yeah, so we want to invite everyone in USM to participate in this MOOC Challenge. We have some money prize there, not much, but kind of token price for the effort put in. But doing MOOC is something that I think very, very important. So that's next week. On the 8th of March, we will have, I will give some brief briefing about this MOOC challenge. And at the same time, we will invite 4 speakers. They are the winners of MOOC Challenge 2020. We will hear from them, experience sharing from them, how they, managed to do a very high quality MOOC. And they are actually the winners of the MOOC Challenge 2020. And you can see their MOOC on our USM platform, yeah? Hopefully it will inspire you to embark on MOOC. So please make a point to attend the session on 8th of March next week, yeah? Thank you very much. So probably start lah bila Prof dah ready, Prof, eh?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Karim, for the intermission. Selalunya I do it in my office, but today I decide to do it in our creative learning lab. So I didn't bring my cup of water with me.
At UTLC, right?
Yeah, kat UTLC.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so before we go to the final Q&A and sharing session, is there anything that you would want to ask? Or maybe itulah. Tapi tu, I think to do the rubric development, maybe we wait until the you know, we don't have this PKPB lah apalah. We wait until everything is okay, because I strongly believe that in order to do the rubric development, we need to do it on face to face, in a smaller group where everybody will do it and they have to present. Because if it's like this, I can give you what it is, but truly I don't know how much you're getting. I can understand that, because listening to me from 9 o'clock until now is pretty much horrendous. So I can understand the difficulty to grasp a lot of things. But I'm hoping that in this 2 hours, Kak KB, itulah tunggu sampai kita rasa macam okay. I don't mind going anywhere. So, but now I just want to stay in Jitra. Yeah, okay. Because I think it requires hands-on. It requires apa ni, a lot of guidance lah. Because I know it's not difficult, but it requires a lot of thinking. Macam tu lah, kan? Okay. Yeah. Oh, now it's right. Saja je I letak, dah lah tak cukup. The title is 18 plus. So I'm just saying beyond LV as in Louis Vuitton. So yeah. Anyway, the basic design of doing this, of doing alternative assessment for the soul. Number one is actually to look at your learners lah. I mean, you can do alternative assessment, but it might not be for the soul, because you did not even consider your students. Consider where your students are, what makes them like to do what you want to do. I mean, what makes them like what they're doing. You know, what ticks them in that sense. Do they like to do projects, or do they like to do artwork? Because all this will determine the kind of assessment that you are going to provide to them, so that they can showcase their experiences and their talent while solving the problem, and connecting whatever the knowledge that they receive from your course into the assessment. The next thing that you need to do is actually to look at the learning outcomes, because no point of looking at the learners without looking at the learning outcomes. This is the standard. This is where you want to bring your learners to, right? You cannot, how shall I say this? Until and unless you do the curriculum review, the course learning outcome, you've just got to just adhere to this course learning outcome. If there are problems, you would have actually indicated that, and when it's time for curriculum review, you can actually do a proper curriculum review where you provide the input to the faculty members and the program leaders, in order for them to consider to do the curriculum review, and so on and so forth. But until and unless that occur, the course learning outcome stays, and you have to adhere to it, and making sure that it is considered in your rubric as well as in your instruction when you're designing the assessment. Now, yes, we talk about alternative assessment as if it is actually the final product, right? But alternative assessment allows formative assessment as well. So that's why your delivery, I'm not sure about USM, but let's just say if it's a normal undergraduate, I'll just give you an example. If you're supposed to do a 3-hour slot for a week, right? So either you do it 1.5, that's what we do in UUM, or perhaps 2 and 1. So whatever the allocation is, I mean, one, I assume it's tutorial, so it's a lot of students doing a lot of activities. But within your 2 hours, also allocate activities in the classroom based on the course learning outcome for the day, for the week, yeah, for you to allow your students to do some form of activity that you are then able to provide the formative feedback and assessment. So while you're doing alternative assessment, the delivery is also a way for you to guide your students, all right, before they submit their alternative assessment. I mean, they submit their final product. So finally, if it's for the soul, if you want your students to feel that they have actually not only learn from the course, but they can see the relevance of what they are learning in their perspective, in their context, then you've aced it lah. That means that is basically allowing the course is not just a course. The course has actually influenced the development of the adult, of the soul of the adult, and because of that, it brings out the identity of the learners. So a good alternative assessment is not only when it's relevant to the learning outcome, it also shows or makes the students see the importance and relevance in their own context. And finally, having the right measuring tool, having a rubric. That's why when I asked you the question whether you've developed your own rubric or you've used other people's rubric, be careful when you're using other people's rubric, because the rubric that you have in the internet might not have the same learning outcomes and the philosophy of your course and your program, unless you're teaching language, because language is pretty much generic. You know, if it's related to listening and speaking, that one you can actually take from any kind of rubric that's out there. But when you are using rubric for your specific course, I think it's advisable for you to develop your own, because you will understand what the course is about and what the task that you have given in relation to the learning outcome. So that's why developing your own rubric is essential. And understanding what are the components and whether you've ticked the right, you've done to the best of your ability to come up with the right rubric that can become a good measuring tool for in relation to your learning outcome, in relation to your course, and to do analysis after that based on students' work is also pertinent in order for you to ensure that you have already got a reliable and valid measuring tool. Before I get people to tell me about their stories, let me share two stories to wrap things up before the sharing. The next part will be the sharing session. I would like to share what a colleague of mine who is actually teaching Islamic marketing. And I've told a lot of, when I do training, I've told a lot about the students in her class and what she has done to her class. Because before this, she was not teaching them that way, you know. But going through the training in the University Teaching Learning Center and getting herself equipped with the skills, yeah, because she's not from education, definitely, but she takes the pride to make sure that she understands how best to actually provide the right delivery and the right assessment for her students. And that's why she attends the training, just like what Prof. Karim was asking everybody to fill up the CPD form and all that. You know, if you're entering the training for the knowledge, alhamdulillah, I think that will come back to you in very good ways. But some people also come for the training just to collect the CPD points without actually understanding what they gain from the session, and that's where they will never get it, you know. perhaps they have taken the training, attended the training many times, but they still can't get it. In her case, she took the trouble, although quite late towards her career life, but that's fine, you know, as long as you do transform before you retire. And that was a good thing that happened to her, because she started designing interesting activities in her classroom. She wasn't confident using Web 2.0 tools. She attended the Web 2.0 tools training, and then right after the training, she started using whatever that she has learned from the training in her classroom immediately. See, that is also that's a true mark of an adult learner. They want to use whatever that they have learned immediately in their context. You know, so once she has completed the training on Web 2.0 tools, she started using all these Web 2.0 tools with her students, and she started using. You know, I remembered introducing to her Padlet. She went off exploring all sorts of Web 2.0 tools and started teaching me about Trello. So can you see that how the learning becomes a trajectory of learning when she now becomes a kind of like a trainer teaching me how to use Trello. That's what I'm giving you an example. So she used these Web 2.0 tools to get to her students who actually loves gadgets. I think what Dr. Rosli was saying, you know, while I'm talking in front, my students are actually at the back playing with the game with their gadget. Yeah, but in her case, she designed in such a manner that they have to use the gadget in her class, but they use the gadget in a specific way related to the course that she was related to the lesson that she was actually designing. And that's where she broke the social barriers. That it's her class that I was talking about. Islamic marketing, most of the students come from religious schools. The boys will sit on one side and the girls will sit on the other side. They don't speak to each other, nor do they look at each other. But what she did was she used the Web 2.0 tools. I can't remember whether it was Quizlet or was quizzes, but they were randomly assigned to groups in order to solve the tasks, you know, whatever questions that was given. So they were forced in that task to actually work together in a situation where they don't know who these people are, not let alone these people are of the opposite sex. So the adrenaline was not just high because of I think the adrenaline was not just high because of the context of the task, but also because for the first time they were actually talking, you know, to the opposite sex. But they were talking about solving the problem, and that's where and when I became the person who's actually sitting at the back, because she wanted me to become her mentor, kind of like, can you come to my class and see whether I'm doing it right? You know, how can because I'm afraid that the way in which I say might sound condescending to the students. I'm trying my best to learn how to use empathetic language, and I say, okay, fine. So I sat at the back and I was curious to see how these students, especially those few boys, so I interviewed them and I asked them, and they said the things that I'm telling you now. You know, they felt uncomfortable with the girls. And because they have never spoken, not that they have never spoken to the girls. Well, yeah, their environment is as such that they don't speak to the girls naturally. They only speak if they have to. They have this prejudice thinking, you know, that the girls will do certain things. And the same thing for the girls. The girls will say that the boys are like this. But it's only when they were working together, they realized that, oh, hang on a minute, they're not girls and boys. They are people who actually can think. And when I'm stuck on one aspect in solving this problem, she is able to solve the problem. When she's stuck, he is able to solve the problem. So they were now beyond the gender differences. They now began to look at people as individuals, and when they work as team, individuals that make the team work. Because if they don't do it as a team, they will not become number one, because they've got to answer the question quickly in order for them to ace it, right? So she had to, the reason why she did those kind of activities, because in her course, the learning cluster that was given to her was social skills. And she noticed that the students don't even know how to say, I mean, they are so, I don't know, they probably have no adult speaking to them, that they use languages that is not appropriate in a conversation with adult people. Do you understand what I'm saying? They use colloquial languages, very informal languages that sometimes might offend different generation, and maybe not to their generation, but to other generation, they might have a problem. Then that's where the learning takes place about what kind of social interaction. When you're speaking to people who are elder than you, how do you speak? People who are within your age, how do you speak? In a formal context, how do you speak? So the activities became like that. And she was preparing the students to build their confidence to communicate with people, because she has decided that for her course, she's going to do a service learning, where the students are going to help the proprietors of the cafe in the university about the concept of halalan toyiban, in order for the students to be able to help the community, which is actually the proprietors of the cafe, to get the halal certificate. Now, so they have learned about what is halal and toiban, you know, so they understand the concept, and that's the knowledge that they have. So they have to now make sure that their community understand. And it's through their observation, because they looked at you know, the knowledge that they've got. They knew what halal and toiban was, and when they were observing in the real context, they realized that the community do not have the right conception of the term, and that's people who are serving the I mean providing the service. People who are the consumers also take things for granted, you know. So while they were doing, but of course their task during the service learning, their task was just to help the community understand about halal and toyiban, and ensuring that they are able to comply to all the requirements in order for them to get the halal certificate. And the assessment was just about, if you look at the rubric, it doesn't show all this service learning. The rubric that she has for that particular assessment was just on the cognitive level. I mean, the cognitive level of the course learning outcome, the affective, if there was, and the social skills. That was the rubric that she had. But what I mean by assessment for the soul, the thing that the students got from the assessment, you know, put aside the scores that they get from the rubric. The thing that they got from the assessment was that they realize they have a role to play in the community. They now have the knowledge of halal and toiban because they took the course, this Islamic marketing course. They know that when you're doing marketing according to the Islamic way, this is what you're supposed to do. You cannot do what you know, these people, although they are probably Muslim, but they are not following the Islamic way of marketing. So they realize that they have a role to play. These people are still in their semester 6, I think. I can't remember, but they had a good few years left in the university. But after the activity, the assessment that they did, they were basically eager to leave the university so that they can help the society to, you know, to do better if they can work as an executive in Jakim or whatever. And believe me, once the assessment was over, we thought that it was over, right? But they came to the lecturer to say that, okay, we have done these findings, we have got these findings, we now understand the context in which this community are working. We would like to present this to the upper management. Can you see that? Presenting to the upper management will not give them any extra marks for their work, but they insisted that. They insisted that they should share whatever findings that they have found based on their course to let people who of authority who can make the difference, who can make the changes to understand. And they're willing to do it. And if you look back, they were these people who were not able to communicate. And now they have the confidence to even speak to people in the upper management of the university. Now that is what I mean by trajectory of learning. And they did the presentation, and because of them, there were changes in the cafe within the university. And for the instructor, she's already started to think about how can now we improve the community outside of the university, not just within the university, because within the university that's fine already. So let's look at the community, the nearing community outside of the university. Did she receive funding for service learning? Answer is no. Did the students get extra funding for traveling to and fro, from the community, and did they have extra time? I mean, did they have to have extra time to do all this to complete the task? Yes. Funding? No. Extra time? Yes. But the beauty of it is that through the assessment, it influenced their soul. They realize that they have a role to play in the community. They have to educate the community, because the community take things for granted, and the community still do not understand the actual meaning of halal and thayyiban. That is a clear-cut example of what I mean by assessment for the soul, where the students and the lecturers are doing something beyond, not just that it wasn't planned to do beyond, yeah. It became naturally when the students see the relevance of what they were doing in the classroom and how it's affecting their real world. Yeah. The next one, that was an undergraduate case, yeah. The other case is the postgraduate case. This is social culture theory and learning. This is a course where teachers, because it's postgraduate, most of them were teachers. So they came into the program to do their Masters in Educational Psychology. And one of the courses in this Masters in Educational Psychology is this particular course. They wanted to, of course, when they came in with the notion of, they talk about how difficult the students were. Students are lazy. Students, it's all about blaming the students. It's all about saying that the students are not serious in learning and all that. All sorts of stories that they are telling. Now, how do we break that barrier without hurting them? How do we can't tell the students who are teachers that they have got it all wrong, that they cannot blame their students. They've got to also reflect on what they do, because what they do will also influence what their students are getting. So the only way, if I may say, the only way to mediate their learning is through movies. So the movie became the environmental mediation. The movie became the stimulus for them to reflect on their own practices through the movie. And it doesn't hurt that much, because they were talking about what's in the movie and not talking about what's happening in their own context. But in reality, what was happening in the movie was rather similar to what they were experiencing. So using the movie make sense to how the theory is actually helping them to understand about learning. And the theory is difficult. Social culture theory is not an easy theory to understand. But because we use movie to exemplify how this particular theory can be applied. That's how they see the connection. And that's where they unpack the characteristics of the theory in order to apply to what happened in the movie. Now, movie was just the stimulus to get them on the right path, because they were all blaming the students and blaming everything except for whatever that they were doing. So it was through the movie that they realized it's actually whatever that the teachers do also influence what the students how the students responded. So they now take the perspective of the students rather than taking the perspective of the teacher. So they were discussing about the movie, the context of the movie, without realizing that it also, in not so many ways, have influenced the way in which they reflect on their own practices. Because after that, when they were asked to do reflection, they started saying, I looked at before I watched the movie, I thought the same way. You know, I thought that the students are reacting because of this and that. Only when I watched the movie, I realized it's the reason why the students reacted that way is because of the environment that they were in. And the way in which this teacher has actually transformed the students made that difference. And applying now the characteristics of the theory into the movie helped them to realize, maybe I can do that in my own context. That's when we started doing the mini project. The mini project is where they have to do little study in their own context using the social culture theory. How they can do the right intervention in order to influence, to help the students learn. Because before that, they were blaming the education system, they were blaming the curriculum, they were blaming everything. But after going through those series of discussion about the movie, reflecting about their own practices, and then now carrying out the mini project and seeing the transformation that's happening in front of them, and the best part of it, when they were telling me this particular student was really not engaging in the classroom, but when I did this, when we encouraged, there was one activity that they did, that particular student was the one who actually did very well, and from there, that student actually transformed. So they had to go through that process where they see when they're able to see how their whatever that they're doing impact on their students, and the students transform. Only they then become transformed themselves. So the trajectory of learning on their part is because they see the evidence from their students. And that's where the teachers in that classroom, in this particular postgraduate classroom, understood their role, that they are important to make a difference to their students' learning, and they can they put them in any situation. They realize that it's them who can actually become the catalyst to making the students' lives different, impactful, or not. So the choice was actually whether to blame and not do anything, or to make a difference and to intervene and really help the students to actually learn. So again, if you look at the course learning outcome for this particular course, it's got nothing to do about asking students whether they see their role as someone who can make a difference to the students' lives. But that's the lesson that they got from the assessment. And the assessment was just the mini project. And in the mini project, the rubric was just based on the course learning outcome related to the mini project. But the story, the impact that they got from the assessment, it touched their soul, in the sense that they now realize that they cannot blame. They have to stop the blaming game and start doing, start helping in the right sense of the word as a teacher. I think that's it, and I'm going to allow people to share their story, or if they don't have any stories, questions.
Yes, please feel free to share your story. Anyone like to share, your story, your experience, maybe?
Any questions that were there in the chat yang I might have actually missed a lot?
Yeah, if if you have any question, feel free to also unmute the microphone and ask the question directly.
Yeah.
If you have any question in the chat box not yet answered, so you can unmute the microphone and ask directly. Or maybe share your story on how
Yeah.
this assessment what do you call this, for the soul, right?
Yeah.
Assessment for the soul. What do you understand and how do you experience? Anyone here would like to share?
Everybody has gone quiet because they realize that they're in the wrong group. They thought something juicy for 18 plus.
Well, this
Sorry
is
for the
actually
disappointment.
quite a heavy subject, but I think assessment is increasingly become more and more important, and it's one area we are lacking actually. So I think we understand more and more now, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. Things that we need to learn. So yeah, come on, USM, share your voice. We are giving the voice to you. So there's a time to share. Just say a few words.
Assalamualaikum.
Salam. Siapa ni?
Maybe my name is Shariza from ISDEF.
Yeah. Okay.
Perhaps I just because I'm considered a new lecturer in a way, 3 years, and this whole rubric thing, it's actually rather challenging for me, because I think you need experience to translate this course learning outcome and how to translate it well into your rubric. I would say that this this course today has opened up the mind, and I'm really looking forward if there's a way how we can enhance our skills, because I think developing rubric needs skills. So and getting a face-to-face might still be a long way to go. So how can we help ourselves feeling this sometimes you feel a little helplessness, so can you if possible shed some light on how I can feel motivated and more confident? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Shariza. Nice name, by the way. Are you teaching the course on your own, or do you have a group of people teaching the course as well?
At my center, because we actually only offer postgraduates classes, and most of our classes are, yes, we have co-lecturers.
Okay. My next question would be, are the co-lecturers experienced ones or newbies like you? I wouldn't say you're newbies, but
Well,
since you claim yourself as new, so yeah.
in terms of them being in the service in USM, I think they're much longer than me. But
Okay.
in terms of Wallahu Alam, because although as a lecturer I'm new, but in terms of teaching, because I've taught at primary school levels and secondary school levels, so I think good enough. My co-lecturer, I see her actually attending this course as well, so that helps.
Okay, good. So
Yeah.
what you can do for those who I know doing, as I think I've said that from the beginning, right? Doing the rubric requires a lot of thinking. And you are right. You think I always, I mean, I can do the rubric in 10 minutes? Answer is no. Do you think that I'm confident with my rubric after years of using rubric? The answer is still no. Because you, every time when you have different kind of students, you wouldn't want to give the same kind of assignment, you know, every time you teach a course, right? You probably will have, you tweak the context. You can't tweak the CLO, but you can definitely tweak the context. The minute you tweak the context, you need to provide a kind of a different kind of a rubric so that it's suitable for the context, right? So if you're asking me, if you're telling me that it's overwhelming, normal. It's a normal process. Okay. But if you're asking me whether, but I'm alone, you know, I don't know how to do, that's why I don't do it alone. Do it together with your friends, especially when you're teaching the course with more, you know, more than one people teaching the course. All the more reason that you need to sit together and start brainstorming. What is it? What kind of a task that we're going to do? What kind of criteria that we're looking for? Because I'm sure you've heard the notion of better hits, more hits are better than one. Can,
Two hits are better than one. Yeah.
yeah, right. So, well, two or more, right? In this case, if there are more than two people teaching the course, so you will be challenging. You will be challenging each other to ensure that you can fine tune your rubric. Now, what you are trying to do is actually you emulating the collaborative learning that your students will be doing later on anyway. So you're walking the talk. Now, some of the lecturers, they ask students to do the collaborative learning. They have never done collaborative work themselves. Doing research, they will, everybody, you buat yang ni, you buat yang ni, you buat ni, everybody go into their own lab or their own room, and everybody, and the next thing, 1 week from now, everybody starts sending their own work. Do they collaborate and do they communicate? No. But they get things done. Somehow or other, they have this MLM way of doing things where you'll churn one paper and I'll churn one paper, and at the end of the day, 10 people churn 10 papers within a year, and everybody gets all the H index, 20, 30 H index and whatever. You know, do they collaborate? No, they don't know how to collaborate. And that's why they never learn how to speak with empathy in their voices. They always use condescending tone because they're so used to condescending thinking on their own in their little room. So while you're providing, I mean, you're developing your rubric, don't forget your friends. They are there to give you some guideline, you know, and if they are seniors here, learn to say nice words first before you say whatever that needs to be changed. For the new ones, don't learn all the wrong things. Learn all the good things. You know, don't say, she got away by doing all those things. I shall emulate her. No. Don't repeat history. Do not have this vicious cycle of showing off that you are the all-knower or whatever. No one is an all-knower. Everybody has got to understand that. Once you understand that, you will design delivery for the soul and assessment for the soul.
Yeah.
Like what I get. Sorry, Prof. Karim.
Carry on.
It's what I understand is we must have the end in mind. What kind of students we want to develop at the end of attending our course, and trying level best to translate that end in mind in your rubric and your course learning outcome and all that.
That begin with the end in mind. You already done that before you met your students. When you design your program learning outcome, you have already had that in mind.
Okay.
But
All
what
right.
I said that you need to see your students, you need, when the students come into your classroom, don't look at the end in mind. You've got to look at your students first, then bring them to the end in mind. That's what we sometimes forget, because we always look at, oh, I want you to reach this one, this one, this one. How to reach? You didn't prepare them. You know, it's like pandai-pandai you all lah. So they will pandai-pandai you all from year 1 until pandai-pandai you all year 4. Sometimes when you ask them, how do you survive? I really don't know, but I survive. Rather than telling you good stories about, I learned, like the girl who told me about how she learned marine biology in semester 2. She was in semester 6 by the time I interviewed her. But you know, she was telling me all the things that she had learned when she was in semester 2. So which means in semester 2, there was the trajectory happening. And that's the reason why before that, she didn't know why she took the program, but now she realized why she realized the beauty of the program. That's what I mean. You already design your program in such a manner that you have started beginning with the end in mind, yes, but your students have not started. So you got to make sure that they can be prepared through your delivery, through your assessment, that they will eventually become what you have had in mind when you design your program.
Thank you, Prof. Fauzi. I think this is a very strong and clear message. I wish everyone of our staff, academic staff in USM especially, can listen to this message. Sometimes we need someone, you know, to have the audacity to tell us the fact. It's a hard fact. And I agree with you, Prof. Fauzi, that I don't think we pay much attention, especially on the assessment, doing rubric collaboratively and putting so much time to really scrutinize and agree with our, you know, especially for team teaching, to really discuss what would be the best, you know, the descriptive words and so on, so that the rubric is clear to everyone teaching the course. I have a feeling that it's not really happening in a way that we wish this thing, you know, as you said. I think that's a very good message for everyone here. Hopefully we can share this message to all our colleagues. Yeah, very good question, Dr. Shirin. Any more? I think it's a very
Thank you,
good
Prof.
discussion
Karim and
here.
Prof.
Yeah.
Fauzia. Thank you so much. It
Yeah.
answers-
Very good question and very good response from Prof. Fauzia. Yeah, anything else? I think we should take this opportunity to really thrash out and share our thought. Anything you feel about assessment, what else that we need to learn. So just throw the idea, throw the challenge, throw the questions. Use this opportunity to really have this intellectual discourse. Yeah, there's a question I noticed just now from Dr. Nur Waliuddin. Is there any type of assessment to the soul that you think should be included in every course, excluding test and exam? So maybe she want to be more specific, Prof. A type of assessment for the soul.
Are you trying to say that to move away from the final exam? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, maybe, I think so. Yeah, Dr. Nur Waliuddin, maybe you want to clarify? Because we don't want to read between the lines. You still there?
Ya, Assalamualaikum Prof.
Ya, silakan.
Okay, based on your experience, is there any specific assessment that really touch the student soul that should be included in every course, exclude the 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 test and exam, the final exam?
Well, that's what I said. I mean, the sharing of the two cases is an example of how alternative assessment can become the potential for us to actually touch the soul of our students through the assessment. yeah, when you talk about alternative assessment, you know, the potential is vast because of the nature of, you know, the elements that I've mentioned just now. It's open-ended nature, its ability to relate to the real world context. So ability for the students to actually see the relevance will be higher compared to quizzes and tests, definitely. Because the quizzes and tests, you're actually looking at subject matter, right? You're looking at how they, if they ever solve the problem, it's just solving the problem based on the context that was given during a specific time, which is the exam, within 2.5 hours or within 1 hour. Whereas an alternative assessment, they are able to do it within a significant length of time. And you know, if I can refer back to the example of Islamic marketing just now, some of the students didn't had to do more than what was required of them. You know, although the lecturer said you have to collect the data or do whatever that you need to do within the 2 weeks, some of them couldn't finish it within the 2 weeks. So they took their initiative to do beyond the 2 weeks in order to get things done. And the reason why they couldn't do it was not because of them. The reason why they couldn't do it because they were respecting the proprietor of the cafe, who were very busy to handle them, you know. So the proprietor keeps stalling the interview so that they can do it later. So the students couldn't finish their work within the stipulated time, but they took the trouble to visit them outside of the class, outside of the time frame, in order to complete the task. Meaning, yeah, on one hand, you could say that the reason why they were doing that because they wanted to get their marks. But on the other hand, they could actually go back to the lecturer and say, I couldn't do this because of the proprietor, you know, they're not doing this. So can you give me extra marks for at least attempting? But it's the proprietor, you know, they are very problematic. They don't want to give us the support and the commitment. They could have done that, but they didn't. They realized that we have to respect that they are busy. They are earning money. So we have to respect their time. We cannot follow our time. We have to respect their time, because we are asking them, and while we are helping them, but we are also asking their help to understand the context of the community. So if you're asking me what type of assessment, any alternative assessment kind of that you can actually relate, and the key word is actually make meaning to your students, inshallah, it will touch their soul. If they are able to see, as I said just now, able to see the evidence in front of them, able to see how that assessment actually help other people, or that particular assessment is actually benefiting someone else other than themselves. That's where you are putting themselves, you're giving them the responsibility of becoming an adult who is going to become the contributing citizen.
So, Professor, please correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is when we say the assessment for the soul, whatever type of assessment that we use, it will go beyond the cognitive aspect in our learning outcome. So it's probably more on the affective domain, and something that can apply the knowledge that they have learned beyond the cognitive, meaning that, you know, let's say that they do PBL, problem-based learning, and the kind of problem they choose is in such a manner that they can relate with, you know, the real life situation. In terms of, for example, service learning. I want to ask your opinion. Would service learning appropriate as one of the assessment for the soul, because, you know, they can involve community, things like that?
Can, projects, okay?
Hmm.
If you're doing project, you're still helping the community, right? In not so many ways, in that sense. Or if you are doing even in a lab base, but you're finding something, and you're seeing whatever that you're doing is relevant. Okay, maybe that's not a good example. Even if you're doing presentation, if you're doing a poster presentation, let's just say they are doing they are teaching marketing, for example, and they are to come up with a good poster. But they're not just coming up with a good poster. They have industry people coming to observe. They have got to do pitching when they're doing the poster. They do the pitching, the business pitching, and it's the people from the industry that come into their class as the judges and giving them feedback. That also can influence their soul, because they now realize that initially they thought it was just an assessment, but now they're getting feedback not only from their instructor, not only from their peers, but actually people from the industry. So it doesn't have to be service learning. It can be in your classroom, but you're making the assessment meaningful to them, in the sense that they can see, oh, if this was a real business pitching, if I don't get it, I won't get the whole entire funding. But if I got it, oh my God, people who says, if the industry people says, that's a brilliant idea, if I've got a 20,000 grant, I would have given you right now. That would boost the students, morale and self-confidence. Maybe they were just in their year 2. They've got a good long way to go, 2 more years in the campus before they can actually go out to do their actual pitching. But they're getting the messages that whatever that I'm learning now is actually relevant to the real world context, because these people come from the real world. They are telling me that whatever that I'm doing right now is just an assessment to me, I thought, but whatever that I'm doing right now is actually relevant in the real world context.
So does that mean also assessment for the soul equal to authentic assessment?
Yeah, definitely. That's where alternative assessment comes in, right? Alternative assessment has all these elements. It has authenticity. It is open-ended. It requires students to show their creativity. It basically embrace individual differences. You don't tell the students how to come up with the posters. They will come up with beautiful posters. And sometimes you will say, oh my God, where did they learn this from? Because they are excited to do it. They see the relevance. They will spend hours and hours to do it, because they want to show that they can do it.
They are not only being driven by getting the best grade, but they are also driven by the underlying, reason why they have to do it, right?
That's right. So forget about don't tell them about the A's and whatever. It will come naturally.
Well, I'm trying to fill a gap here while waiting for other response from others. If not, then we can wrap up the session. Maybe I'll give a chance, 1 or 2 more.
There's some questions here.
Okay.
What is this? Assessment for the soul must include empathy by putting yourself in a recipient's shoe without being condescending. Yeah. Correct. Dear Prof, how to differentiate between rubric and answer scheme? Answer scheme is an answer scheme. If it's an answer, okay, remember I told you just now, a rubric, you send the rubric in advance to your students. When you provide the assignment, you provide the rubric as well. Please do not give your answer key. Your answer key is your answer key. Answer key is totally different. That's a question that is close-ended. You've already got the answer. There is only one kind of answer. So you keep that. In an alternative assessment, the answers are open-ended. That's why you can provide the rubric. They can get 1, they can get 2, they can get 3, they can get 4, they can get 5, if it's a 5-skill rubric. That's not the answer. That's a standard. Answer key, that's definitely the answer. Do not give your answer key. You give the answer key, you got to sit down in your little room and start writing questions to cover, because your questions dah bocor, So that's the difference between answer key and rubric. Okay, and rubric is used when you cannot, but it's for the open-ended kind of situation. All right.
Yeah.
Any assessment could touch students' soul as long as the assessment could give meaning. Yep, to the real world and make them contribute to society. Correct. I asked my students to make a project to develop online exam. Okay. Everyone did produce good output. As I told them, you can hack everything if you can develop the system properly. Oh dear, Dr. Aman, are you from the computer science? Our project from many groups, so different knowledge and output shared among them.
Yeah, from computer science.
From computer science. Ah, okay. Yeah, that's part of your syllabus, right? Hacking and making other people's lives miserable. But that's where I think while they can do hacking, that's where I think the ethics should come in. You have to tarbiyah your students so that they don't take pleasure in the hacking, but they do know how to overcome when such things happen in their institution where they work.
I think they have something called ethical hackers, I think. Stephen? Yeah, ethical hackers.
Yeah,
Betul lah,
I do understand because my son is actually taking computer science, so I do know what you're trying to do. Because basically it's about network and security expert. Yeah, before you can actually know how to tackle hackers, you need to know how to hack yourself. I understand, but always, never forget to provide the ethical tarbiyah session after they have aced the skills of rectifying hacking in the system. Yeah.
Is hacking, eh?
Sorry?
You can is hacking as well.
Tak tahu kan sebab if it's part of the curriculum that they need to do that, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
part of the syllabus.
All right. I guess that's about all got, eh? From Fauzi.
Yep.
Boleh
Any
tanya
last
tak,
any
Prof?
last message from you?
Boleh tanya, ada satu lagi tu. Boleh tanya.
Lilis.
Oh, ada. Ya, silakan. Lilis.
Terima kasih, Prof. Both Prof. Interesting. My question is, how do you make sure that you not fall into a trap of, you're supposed to assess a skill, but then you get caught in the assessment tools that you're using. So how do you make sure that you don't confuse yourself with what you want to achieve and using the reason that this is not achieved because you have chosen the wrong assessment tools or something like that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the reason why I say thank you for the question. That's the reason why I'm saying when you come up with the rubric development, you always got to go back to your course learning outcome so that you don't have that problem. But even after you have come up with after you have developed your rubric, always look at your students' work and see whether were you able to differentiate between good work and not so good work based on the rubric. So that's one of the key elements lah to see whether the rubric is close to validity and reliability before you do your actual analysis. But never go away from the course learning outcome. So that's why I'm saying sometimes we might when we take the rubric from outside, from other people, from a textbook, for example, from the internet. That's where you got to be careful, because then you probably will land into the problem as you mentioned just now. You are supposed to be teaching something else, the skills are something else, but your rubric does not measure that particular skill. So that is why you have to be aware. Even if you want to take it from outside, I mean from other sources, you still need to look at the criteria in the rubric and see whether does it fit with your course learning outcome, does it fit with your instruction that you have when you provided the assignment. Then inshallah you'll be okay. I think the problem, that kind of situation will happen when you take from outside.
Okay, Prof. Thanks.
Did I answer your question? I'm not sure, but yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Difficult
Thank you,
question.
Prof.
Right, any
Thank
more?
you.
Any more? Okay, mungkin tak ada lagi soalan kot.
Ada satu lagi.
Oh, tu ada.
Where do we draw the line between being a good guide and blindly spoon feeding the students? As in, there are times where I find myself always wanting to assist the students in completing assessment. Very natural, because sometimes it requires patience when it comes to students providing feedback. Just like today, had to be patient to get 130, but only 45 responded. I'm just joking, just joking. Okay, so yeah, that's why my tagline is I don't teach, because I see teaching as telling. My tagline will be I mediate learning. So when I mediate learning, I don't tell my students, and that's why they're afraid to ask me questions, because they know a question will come back with another question. For example, if they ask me, "What do you think this is?" and I'll say, "Well, what do you think? What do other people think?" You know, so we guide them by prompting, by hinting, by connecting, by asking them to explain, by asking them to find the solution and share with everybody, but not us telling. And we provide the resources. We give them resources that they can refer. They don't have. I'm not saying that they shouldn't ask you questions. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. It's good that your students ask you questions, but what I'm trying to say here is try to abstain yourself from giving away the answer. Try as best as possible to start thinking, how can I help the students to understand without me providing the solution? Because at the end of the day, it's them. They have to search for the solution. They have to figure it out, how to solve the problem. And the students are very clever, you know. They will ask you all sorts of ways to get the answer from you. They're very good. They cannot ask you this type of questions. They will ask you a different way, but in actual fact, they were still trying to get you answering the question so that they don't have to think. So be aware of that and be patient. And through the activities and through the sharing and what ticks them, what irks them basically, the students, is when they see their friends able to answer the question and they can't. Oh, that really irks them. Their ego is at stake. That's where they start studying, because other people can understand, and they start questioning, why is it that I can't understand and other people can? So use their peers to help them, to motivate them to answer their own question. Okay, I think that's about it.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's about it. Maybe your last remark, Prof, to kind of summarize the essence and the gist and the message that you want to, convey.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, everybody. I think I'm hoping that your silence, good silence. To me, good silence means you're thinking. You know, you're actually contemplating about how to now design alternative assessment that can actually, conjure the higher mental function of the human being, as well as their ethical being, their ethical values, so that it touches their soul, so that they can see themselves as a future contributing citizen that can contribute to the real society. Because what goes around comes around. If you plan your your assessment well, your delivery well, you plant the seed of the meaning of learning and the love of learning, inshallah, you will produce good citizen that will come back to help you when you are old. You know, that's what I'm saying. They are going to be our future leaders. So it is and we have all the right and all the energy that we have at the moment to actually help these future leaders so that they will help us back when they contribute to the society, because we're going to be part of the society. So never think that it's just a course, never think that it's just an assessment. The assessment and the course has relevance. Bring out that relevance. Make the students see that relevance. You must also believe that there is relevance in whatever that you're doing, so that you will continuously feel happy and contented when you see your students grow. You know, you will feel, khalas, you know, I have done whatever that I possibly could have done, and look at how these students have gone into a trajectory and they have developed. And that will give you the satisfaction that no award or no external reinforcement would be enough. You know, to see your students actually improve is priceless. And the assessment and the delivery and whatever that you do now, inshallah, will be helpful for the students. And when it's manfaat for them, inshallah, it will be manfaat to you too.
Thank you.
Very long last word. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much, Prof. Fauzia, for the message. My dear colleagues, please take the message to our heart. You know, coming from Prof. Fauzia, the recipient of our prestigious Anugerah Academic Negara. And Prof. Fauzia, for your information, we have also in the participant here, Datuk Sri Saliapa.
Oh my God.
So this is a really, truly lifelong learner. I think
Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Datuk.
really exemplify the true lifelong learner.
Yay, follow.
As you know, Datuk Sri is also in the panel of Anugerah Academic Negara. So I guess everyone here, including myself, I have learned a lot. I've learned something new, and on the assessment especially. So please, you know, take this learning and apply it immediately in our next class, in our next course, because only by applying what we have learned, we can, you know, we can see the impact on our students' learning. And as Prof. Fauzia has mentioned just now, it's all about improving. It's all about growth, you know, and we, in terms of our own personal development and professional development, what we learn today, you know, will allow us to grow further as an academic, and what we apply in our classroom will allow the students also to grow. So it's all about growth. Learning is all about growth. That's the bottom line. So with that, let us show our appreciation. So there's an icon at the bottom. Please click that icon. Give a big round of applause to our speaker, Professor Dr. Fauzia Abdul Rahim. So once again, Prof, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hopefully you can you know, share again maybe in another session on the rubric. Yeah, we will invite you for the next session, hopefully face to face, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah.
Okay? So
Thank
with
you,
that,
Prof.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh, dan kita jumpa lagi dalam sesi yang akan datang, inshallah. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Welcome,
Thank you,
salam warahmatullahi
everyone.
wabarakatuh. Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody. Thank
Have
you,
a nice day
thank you.
and stay safe. Stay safe, everyone,
Yes.
and stay productive.